Okay, it's 12:06, so why don't we call the 8F Appeals Committee to order. Melissa, can you just note the attendance? We have our 3 members here, and all 3 are here, so if you can just make note of that. And then we'll just jump straight into the agenda. So the first up, we have the call to the public. We did receive 1 call to the public, and that's Nancy Ramirez, so you can just come on up to the lectern. And for the call to the public, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Nancy Ramirez. I'm the Data Analyst Coordinator for the Levine Elementary School District. We submitted an expedited appeal for Rogers Ranch Elementary School. After submitting the appeal, we became aware that maybe the data was not going to be corrected, only the actual letter grade. And our appeal does reflect mostly data that is incorrect and not an actual change in letter grade. For example, we had 314 students that were incorrectly identified as non-FAE. They should have been identified as FAE students since they were enrolled since the beginning of the school year. Also, on the final static file that was used, we had only 1 student for that school that was labeled as chronically absent. In the initial static file, we had 220 FAE students who were labeled as chronically absent. So the rate that the chronically absent should have been for that school should be about 21.35%. But in the file that was reported, it was only a 0.18%. So our concerns are really looking forward until for next year. There's no way that they would be able to obtain those points with the 0.18% that was reported this year and being able to either correct that or be under the threshold for the minimum chronically absent. So we just urge you to please be able to correct that data so our schools could get as many points as they can next year. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's all the calls of the public we have. If you are here for a non-expedited appeal, you don't need to submit a request to speak form. We already have you on the schedule, but I don't think we have anybody else. So we will move on to agenda item number 2. And this is just an information-only item to discuss the duties and responsibilities of the committee, including the policies and procedures governing the process by which a school may appeal its 8F letter grade. So as committee members are aware, schools have the right to submit an appeal of its 8F letter grade. This year, the appeal window was open from October 5th through October 25th at 5 p.m., so that was about 20 days. During that time, the board received 78 appeals, and I'll go into detail on how those kind of break out in a little bit. And just for some historical context, that is pretty consistent with what we received last year, and my understanding, fairly consistent with the number of appeals that we had in previous under the old accountability system. So for this committee, based on the policies and procedures adopted by the board and the rubric, there are a few things that this committee needs to take into account when considering each appeal. And there's sort of 3 hurdles that each appeal needs to clear. So the first is that it meets the grounds for an appeal as established by the board. There's 5 categories there. It's environmental issues or events, a school or community emergency, a school tragedy, an other similar substantive event, or incorrect data, which is a new one that was added statutorily this year. If we do meet that hurdle, if the school does meet one of those 5 categories of appealable grounds, there also needs to be evidence that the school took steps to mitigate that event to try to decrease its impact on student outcomes and ultimately the letter grade. And then finally, we need evidence that it did, in fact, impact the letter grade of that school. And that kind of leads me to another point when we talk about each of these schools and the appeals. Certainly the committee wants to strive for consistency in terms of what we are recommending for approval, and these are just recommendations and not final action, but certainly want consistency in what is being recommended, but also want to recognize that each school's appeal is unique in that the grounds for the appeal may be the same. If we take, for example, like a flood, maybe a flood happens at one school and another school, that's the same sort of event, but the school may have took different steps to mitigate that event, and it may have taken different impacts on that school, and maybe it did or did not impact the letter grade. Though I would imagine a flood would probably impact student outcomes, regardless. So those are things that the committee needs to consider with each of these appeals. There are 3 categories that this appeal can recommend to the board: approval, denial, and I think both of those are pretty self-explanatory based after we go through the rubric and considering, and then there's dismissal. And this is consistent with what happened with what we did last year. Some appeals, if they are outside the scope of this committee, so if they are appeals that are not something that this committee can really even review, then those can go, can be recommended by the committee for dismissal. Now, I do want to make a point that even if the committee recommends dismissal, that does not mean that those concerns or whatever was raised as part of those appeals are not potentially valid concerns, but typically they might be something that is raised with concerns about the business rules or the ADF accountability system in general, and are not necessarily things that this committee, this is not necessarily the venue for those, but it is something that may warrant additional attention by the board, by the technical advisory committee, or by some of our partners. So I want to emphasize that just because the committee and the board may dismiss appeals, that does not mean that those concerns aren't being heard and looked into. It just means that this isn't the venue for that. How today is going to work, hoping to get through all of the non-expedited appeals. This was the day that we had told schools before the appeals window had even opened, or just as the appeals window opened, this would be their day for their non-expedited appeal to be heard. So we want to try to get through all of those, as many of those as possible. And then if we do not have additional time, if we're feeling a little gassed, then we can call it, and we do have time set up tomorrow to go over the expedited appeals. We are hoping that the committee can take action recommending each school as we go down the list, rather than waiting till the very end or till tomorrow. So that's something, the committee is not necessarily beholden to that, but that is something I think that would be a good goal for us to get through. So that's very broadly sort of our plan for today, what the committee needs to consider. And again, this is information only, but I'm happy to answer any questions on any of that before we start moving along. Okay, so with that, we can move into the non-expedited appeals. So for folks in the audience, for how this is going to work, this is the order that we have for all of you. We did send out an email to you on the order. When we call you up, I'll give a brief introduction of the school, and then you'll have your 15 minutes, up to 15 minutes. We will have a timer going. I do want schools hopefully to be cognizant of the time, especially for those schools that are in the latter half of this order or latter third. The longer that some of these early schools might go over, the longer those schools at the end have to wait and want to be respectful of their time. And there's nothing particularly special about this order, except this is the order that we received the appeals. And so that's why they're here. 2 notes before we start getting going. You'll notice school number 3 and school number 7 both notified the board that they were withdrawing their appeal, and so they are not going to be here today to provide a presentation. So no action is required for the committee on those 2. And then school number 16 had a scheduling conflict and would not be able to make it in the afternoon. And because we had those 2 other schools withdraw, it just so happened that we had some flexibility on the timing. So 16 is going to be moving up into 3. And then everybody else will stay consistent there, and I'll actually pull up the order here so that way folks can see. So we'll move along there, and then for folks in the audience, if you want to come up, you can just come up to the lectern. If you have additional items, you can sit at the table too and use that mic there. But other than that, we'll move along. Oh, and then one other thing. We do have folks calling in on the line, so there might be people coming in and out. So we'll just try to be flexible and move along as best we can. So with that, are there any questions before we get going? Because otherwise we'll just jump right into it. Okay, so with that, we'll start off with Castle Dome Middle School. And for Castle Dome, originally received a D, and they're requesting a C. And I believe on the phone we have Mr. Shepard, and he'll have to be unmuted.
I am unmuted. Thank you very much.
All right, and Mr. Shepard, it's all yours. Take it away. You have 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, Appeals Committee. My name is Dwayne Shepard. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for Yuma Elementary School District. The area that Castle Dome Middle School is appealing is the area of acceleration readiness, specifically the grades 5 through 8, high school, and of course, indicator. The intent and spirit of this indicator is for schools to be rewarded for students who are accelerating their learning in math, and we believe that Castle Dome has done just that. And as I lead you into our acceleration model for Castle Dome, allow me to give you a current understanding of the high school end of course in our neighboring Yuma Union High School District. Yuma Union High School District uses the Cambridge Math Program, which is a 2-year math cycle. Yes, Castle Dome students do attend Gila Ridge High School to advance their math journey, yet they do not take an end-of-course algebra test until their second year in the program, which would be at the end of their freshman year in high school. So by doing so, Castle Dome loses that possibility of earning the acceleration point in the A to F system. But their story doesn't stop here. Castle Dome has several students who are very talented in math, and as a part of their giftedness and talent, Yuma Elementary School District pays for those students to take a college credit algebra course at Arizona Western College. These are not remedial classes, but actual college-bearing credit courses. We have attached unofficial transcripts for the students who passed the algebra course during the 2017 and 18 school year. And by doing so, Castle Dome students have clearly accelerated their math journey by bypassing high school algebra and earning credit at our local Arizona Western College. Castle Dome Middle School believes, then, it has met the intent and the spirit of the criteria for acceleration for math grades 5 to 8 high school, and of course. That is my simple presentation to you. And how can I clarify any information for you?
Do you have any questions? Go ahead. No, you go ahead. I don't really have any questions. I do see the dilemma, and based on what you've said here, it does seem to be it's based on the business rules for the AZ Merit and of course assessment. Anybody else?
Thank you. I don't have any questions either. That's my concern. I'm not sure what our options are here, given that it does seem to be based on the business rules. It seems like you're doing something really great in terms of advancing students, but I'm not sure that the system allows for us to do anything as this committee to do anything with this appeal.
And members, we did confirm with ADE's accountability folks that this is more of a business rules and how the business rule is formulated, and not necessarily an appealable factor.
I just have a question. So what could Castle Rock do moving forward? Because this is the kind of thing I don't think we want to have happen within our accountability system.
Sure. Member Burton, so board staff, as we go through, and I think maybe this might be a theme as we move forward, board staff can compile these and work with the department and potentially the technical advisory committee. And I know to some extent and to a large extent, a lot of those conversations have already occurred or are ongoing just this past week or so. And so what we can do is we can compile to make sure that the technical advisory committee and potentially the board, has some time and space to think through some of these things. And I think this would fall into that category. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I know there are other schools that are using Cambridge, so I'm not sure that this will be the only time we see this, so I would really like to see this go into that let's handle this correctly in the future category.
Yeah, absolutely. Members, based on what it sounds like here, I think it might be appropriate for a motion for the committee to recommend dismissing Castle Dome Middle School's appeal.
Yeah, so would you like me to? I'd like to motion for a dismissal of this appeal from Castle Dome based on the fact that it's regarding business rules.
Go ahead.
I second.
Okay.
And just as a point of clarification, it's a recommendation
Okay.
to the full board.
Okay.
Right. And so that's a motion and a second, so we'll just voice vote of all those in favor.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes. Mr. Shepard, thank you for joining, and I probably should have mentioned this off the top. Again, these are all recommendations. All of these will be made final, hopefully, at the December 17th board meeting, at which time, shortly thereafter, the public file will be updated to reflect some of those changes, if any, that were made. And if you have any further questions or anything like that, I'd be happy to follow up with you after.
I just had one other, when they were talking about options, and I thought there was one other option that I would just put in the minds of the appeals board right there, and that would be to allow elementary school districts access to the high school end of course test at the elementary level, because then that could be a possibility. And so, and I do thank you for your time, and I do thank you for listening. And I know that you have a lot of appeals to go today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so next up we have Ajo Elementary. Ajo Elementary is requesting a letter grade of a B, and in the preliminary round they had a letter grade of a C, and I will hand it over to the folks from Ajo, who made the journey up, so thank you.
Yes, we did. Members of the Appeals Committee and fellow educators, good afternoon. We do appreciate the opportunity to present our grade appeal for Ajo Elementary School. I am Lauren Carriere, principal of Ajo Elementary and the Ajo Unified School District. We're all one school district from pre-K through grade 12. And this is Mr. Babu KC, who is our data analyst and behavior coach.
Oh, sorry. I stole your mouse.
Okay, good. So we do have a PowerPoint, and on the folder, in the folders that you're being presented, the PowerPoint is on the left-hand side.
Left the call.
Okay, no worries. And then on the right-hand side are some supporting documentation. So just to give you a bit of context, we're definitely a small school. We're in a rural area, one stoplight in Ajo. And so certainly every student's results do have a very large impact on our results and our data. Last year, based on the static file, we did have 331 students in kindergarten through 8th grade, and you can see that 269 of those students, so 81%, were the full academic year, and a number of those, even more than about 82.5%, were free and reduced price meals. And then 227 students in grades 3 to 8, so 180 of them, almost 80%, were full academic year during 2017-18, and we did have a number of English learners. Okay. We have been growing. We're working to grow a lot more. You can see our percentages in English language proficiency, or ELA proficiency. And so this past year, we went up to 27.18%. And then in math, we did a bump up to 26.7% in 2017-18.
I just want to clarify one point. Like in the appeals document, we have stated 28.77%. That's because some of our elementary schools took high school math courses, and they took both the middle school math test as well as the high school math test. The 26.7 is adjusted for counting only one student only one time.
Yeah.
And the 28.77 is when all test scores are included.
Okay.
So when we checked our grade calculations, we noticed on the points, the proficiency points, in 2017 we had 13.05 points, and in 2018 we actually, even though we've been growing and improving in proficiency, we actually went down to 12.79. So we started to investigate and find out why are we decreasing on the proficiency points. And what we found is that a number of our proficient students who are proficient and highly proficient, were considered non-full academic year. And so that was a significant piece for us. So you can see in 2017, we had 5 students who were non-full academic year who were considered in the proficient side of things. And this past year in 2018, we had 16. And I should say that these are, as we took a look, these are kids who've been in Ajo since kindergarten, except for maybe like 3 months last year. So when we look at this particular slide, these are the actual points with the 12.79. So we just wanted you to see where we're getting the data. Mm-hmm. And if we were to, actually include 2 of our students as full academic year students, then the points would actually go up to 13.05.
And those 2 students, we have submitted documentation to show that those students have been with us from kindergarten, and they were throughout their academic career, except for the 3 months, they have been Ajo students. And unfortunately, last year, these students were not full academic year students for Ajo.
So our next slide shows how our proficiency points and our growth points would change with just these 2 non-full academic year students who would be counted. So we would go up 0.26 in proficiency, we would go up 0.38 in growth, and for the total there would be 0.64.
Being a small district, small school, the total points, how much 2 students can impact the overall grade and overall score is like, that's what we want to show through this slide. In a similar manner, like we noticed a discrepancy in special education students. We had 32 students who were full academic year students for who were in the special education program for 2017-18. Out of the 32, only 23 were counted for when they calculated for the special education bonus points. And that is a little bit short of the required 80%, which is 9.818%. And when we looked at the students who were not full academic year special education students, we saw 2 students who were in the special education program received services as of October 1st. But they left. One of them joined the district on the 11th day, and the other one left somewhere like end of first semester. And even that student has been with us from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. And that student left and came back to Ajo, so causing that student to be non-full academic year student. There were 4 full academic year students who were not special ed students as of October 1st, but they started receiving services. As a result, they were not counted in that calculation either. So if we look at the total number, we can say like little bit over 2/3 of the total were only counted as full academic year students. We feel like we didn't get the credit for all the students who were in the special education program. I see that there's a conflict with the business rules, but all the same, I would like the committee to look into this and see how the disparity is. Like close to 30% of our students are not getting credits for being in the program.
So we wanted to let everyone see how these small changes would impact our school grade with just 2 students added. Our special education, if we receive the bonus points of 2, if we had our 2 students who've been with us except for 3 months, ever since kindergarten through elementary, the change in growth and proficiency would be that 0.65, which would take us to the 72.48, which is above the 72.39 required for a B. So we are, of course, asking the appeals committee to override the grade for us and go from take our appeal from a C to a B. We do have at least 3 more students who have been AHO students. They are still AHO students, but we're not full academic year during 2017 and 2018. And so if those students were included in the calculation, that would bring the overall school points even higher. And some of this information is documented on the right-hand side of your folder. Mm-hmm. Then we do have 2 students that we have projected with our MAP testing to be proficient, but they had a family emergency. There was a family death. We had asked if we could test them like the next week after they got back from the funeral, and we said no. Anyway, we were told that was denied. So even though there wasn't a single event like a flood or something like that that was affecting the AHO Elementary School performance, these kind of changes were sufficient to lower the school grade to a C. So we very much would like to request the B and let you see that with the addition of the data results for just a few students, we would have a grade of B for last year. And we are most appreciative of the opportunity to present today if you have any questions.
Sure. I do have a couple questions. Okay. First of all, congratulations on your growth year over year. And I am sympathetic to smaller schools. What is the enrollment currently of AHO Elementary?
So are we ready?
We have gone up slightly, so maybe like 10 or 15 above last year's numbers. So 330s this year.
Okay. And then you presented data in terms of the students who were not counted in FAE, mm-hmm. who worked in your favor. Were there students, did you do the same analysis for any students who have been with you for a number of years, maybe left, came back, but perhaps would not have impacted positively the score?
We have included a number of other students who were non-full academic year students. We have given documentation like what we are seeing is most of them, like if we include all of them, definitely what I'm saying is if you take only students who were in the school district for a long time and if we count them, definitely we are on the positive side. Okay. Like we are making gains.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So I do just want to note that, we had a lot to read through. Everything that you have, aside from the PowerPoint, we did read.
Thank you.
And even in my notes from, looking through your documents, I said I agree and sympathize with the principals. The principal I'm not sure if it was your comments that were in the packet or if it was. Oh. I definitely agree with those sentiments. My problem is, I'm sure that you're not the only school that's in this situation where someone was just not counted on day 11 or just missed the cutoff of October 1st. So when we start kind of fudging those cutoff dates, then there is no cutoff date in theory, and so, but that is part of the business rules as well, and I don't know for sure, but I think that's outside of our scope as far as this committee is concerned, but that really makes it burn all the worse, doesn't it? Because you're just so close, and I understand, and I've been to AHO, I had family down there, and I realize that it's a small community, and it would do a lot to pump that grade up.
Thank you.
Could I just clarify one point? Like this year we had, compared to the year before, we had a significant number of students who were classified as non-FAY, So that is what we want to appeal for, not necessarily like hand-picking students and trying to asking you to reclassify them as full academic year, but rather give a consideration towards the point that
because you had an unusually high number.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Member Broussard and members, to that point, within the policies and procedures adopted by the board, this might be relevant in that the committee, one of the things that is considered a non-substantive event, something that the committee is not permitted to evaluate, is conditions including but not limited to, and one of them is individual student characteristics, and the specific example provided in the policies and procedures is this student was often tardy or absent from his math and reading classes, which I realize, notwithstanding that the last comment that maybe we don't want to pick and choose students, but this does seem to be a sort of student characteristics, especially when in the appeal there were 2 students specifically who were cited as, would have made a big difference, but they were not present to count for FAE for some exigent circumstances.
Mm-hmm. That's all I have.
Yeah, just my concern over it, although I am sympathetic, is the issue of FAE. I mean, when we start redefining FAE for one school, it has huge implications. So I don't know if it's within the scope of the committee, if this is a dismissal. If not, I would move to recommend denial.
Would this be dismissal because it's business rules, or would it be scope?
Members, sergeant members, I think this would probably fall under the dismissal category. Okay. So I think probably a motion to recommend dismissal to the board is probably appropriate.
So I move to dismiss the appeal for AHO.
I second.
Okay. And all those in favor saying aye?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you for coming.
I just want to make a comment again. Thank you for coming and really kind of shining a light on some of the issues that small schools are confronting, because this is, we're all learning through this, and it will be noted.
Thank you.
So now we'll have number 16, right? Ed Key, which I didn't have any information on.
Members, next up we have Ed Key, the Sequoia Deaf School at number 3, and if you recall, this is the one that we swapped around. So if you guys want to come on up.
We do have that. Got it.
Good afternoon, and thank you for providing us with an opportunity to speak with you today regarding Sequoia Deaf School. My name is Tamara Becker, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Instructional Support. Also here with us today is Mark Plitzweit, our CEO, Dr. Heather Lane, the principal of Sequoia Deaf School, and Dr. J.J. Reed, the assistant principal. We've submitted an appeal to you today requesting that this school's performance be modeled under the alternative school model versus the traditional A to F accountability system. The Sequoia School for the Deaf serves a highly unique and specialized population. 100% of the students are provided with specialized instruction based on their IEPs. Many students have multiple disabilities, including intellectual delays, and as you will hear, most enter school with significant deficiencies. EdKey Inc. and Sequoia Deaf School believe in accountability and high expectations. We continue to work to increase the proficiency and growth, but we face some unique challenges in serving this specialized population. Today, Dr. Lane is here to share relevant and pertinent information with you regarding her school.
Is this like working? Yeah?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I think so.
Okay, all right, great, thanks. Okay, good afternoon. As mentioned, 100% of our students are identified with federal labels under special education. Currently, we have 55 students enrolled in grades K through 12 at Sequoia Deaf School. And to demonstrate the uniqueness of our students, I have some facts. about these students. 53% of the student population are labeled hearing impaired. 29% are labeled as having multiple disabilities, which could mean hearing impairment with a learning disability or mild, moderate intellectual disability. 18% are labeled multiple disability with severe sensory impairment. It is important to note that a significant percentage of our students have more than one eligibility category. And 82% of our students also require some form of related service, including speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, counseling, visual impairment services, orientation and mobility, and transportation. So although we are called Sequoia Deaf School, our student population is not just limited to deaf students. Our classrooms are not simply typical classrooms with instruction in ASL in lieu of spoken English. Our students actually have a variety of disabilities that we need to service. Even though we are a K-12 school, the majority of the students that we serve are in grades 3rd through 12th. Based on the tested grade levels used for A to F letter grades, our current letter grade is based on the academic performance of only 87% of the students enrolled in our school. So feel free to refer to the handout that was given to you. It outlines our fiscal year 18 assessment results. Now, this data, however, is only going to give you a snapshot of the student population that we serve at Sequoia Deaf School. We provide students with a bilingual, so American Sign Language and English, and bicultural, deaf and hearing, educational experience. On a national level, 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. And of that 90%, only 10% of the hearing parents ever learn to sign with their children. And unfortunately, we experience the same challenges as other deaf schools all over the United States. From birth, a deaf child has absolutely no exposure to language. It isn't until they enter formal education that they are ever exposed to sign language. So can you imagine being a 5-year-old, cute, energetic, inquisitive, but having no ability to communicate your wants or your needs? Can you imagine the level of frustration that comes with not understanding what is happening in the world around you? Sadly, that is the case for the majority of students who come through the doors at Sequoia Deaf School. In some cases, a deaf child isn't even exposed to sign language until until late in their elementary school experience due to an emphasis on speech and auditory training that is designed to essentially cure a child's deafness. Because of the limited amount of communication in those children's developmental years, this causes some significant delays and barriers that are present when they enter the school system. That stunted language and development adversely affects child's social and emotional well-being, including a lack of understanding of cultural and social cues, which results in poor emotional ties and students often feeling severely isolated. Of course, the need to teach language skills is fundamental for our student success, and our students are essentially learning another language while simultaneously learning the academic content in school. Our students' IEPs are developed based on each individual needs. Our teachers do not have a set curriculum that can address all of these unique needs. And unfortunately, there is no published curriculum designed for deaf students. So therefore, our teachers are required to modify all of their activities and assignments to meet all of the needs of each individual student. Our staff works tirelessly to foster an environment of language development while simultaneously teaching reading, writing, math, science, and history. And not only that, they are also working with families to encourage and support the family's learning of American Sign Language. Staff consistently provides resources and instruction to families to teach them about the importance of communication and the language opportunities in their homes. The last point that I want to leave you with is that deaf education is not comparable to that of hearing children. The lack of exposure to ASL, which is a deaf child's first foundational language, prohibits the development of spoken English as their second language. Now, this is further complicated because deaf students will have little or no auditory access to that spoken language. Yet, our school is currently being evaluated using school standards that are made for hearing populations and tests designed for hearing children. From our perspective, this is akin to using a ruler to measure a skyscraper. Despite the challenges that our students face, our teachers and our staff at Sequoia Deaf School are dedicated and strive to bring our students up to and beyond grade level expectation. We appreciate your time and consideration regarding the unique challenges our school faces. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mark Litwood. I'm the CEO at EdKey, and this is definitely a very unique student population. One of the things that we are trying to find out is if the state school for the deaf and hard of hearing gets a letter grade. That would be a comparable thing to look at. We are hearing from our deaf staff that they have been informed that, yes, they do get a letter grade, and it's not published. That's what we're hearing. So I just want to put that out there for the committee to consider.
It's not the information we have. Not to interrupt your 15 minutes. But
Sure. I just want to throw it out there. Thanks. But this is a 100% subgroup population. And so it's very, very difficult for 55 students to get a letter grade, especially considering how far behind they are and us trying to bring them up. And these staff are wonderful. If you come visit us sometime and check out all the learning that's going on that campus, we'd really appreciate it. And we welcome accountability. That's what we want. That's what they want. That's what the students want. That's what the parents want. We're not trying to avoid that. We're just saying I think our population is a little more alternative and might need a little more alternative consideration when it comes to what these letter grades look like. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Go ahead.
Well, my question actually might be for Ketcher. Is that information correct? Or my understanding was Arizona School for the Deaf and Blind did not receive school letter grades. Can you clarify that?
Member Burton and members, yep. So my understanding is that, and I just confirmed with the department folks, ASDB does not receive a letter grade. My understanding, and that we just confirmed with ADE, is that a letter grade is not calculated for them in any form or fashion. We are checking to see if there's some sort of accountability, some sort of federal accountability maybe that's attached to that. But as far as this committee and the ADAF letter grades, they do not receive a letter grade, nor is one calculated for them.
Okay. So then my question is, I know you're requesting to be in the alternative model. Would you, to me it makes more sense to be consistent with ASDB. Do you agree?
Absolutely, we agree.
Okay. So, I don't know if anybody, I would like to move that if that's appropriate, for Sequoia to be in the same category as ASDB in terms of letter grade calculation.
No rating.
No
so
rating.
no rating.
So
just
no
an
rating.
exempt.
Yeah. So rather than a school letter grade, it's NR.
And Member Burton and members, so I think one thing that we would, I think that the committee could make that recommendation. I think one thing we want to ensure is we still want to circle up with the State Board for Charter Schools to ensure that there is still some accountability happening. And I know that the letter grades do factor into that, and they do find ways for other charter schools that receive NRs. But that's something that we would want to close the loop on. Again, notwithstanding, I think the committee could move forward with that recommendation here today with the understanding that, maybe this is kind of jiving on the same population of students that ASDB serves. But I did just want to make sure that that's something that we'll circle up with on a staff level.
And Catcher, I do believe that Arizona State Board for Charter Schools has a process for that. I think you would certainly meet the threshold for the special school.
Right. We already have school-specific goals in place with the State Board for Charter Schools.
Okay.
Moving forward, it was kind of dependent on what happened here today, but those are already in place. We set those out last year when the school had an NR, but moving forward, if the school continues to have an NR, we'll continue to submit that data to them. So there is still that accountability through the State Board for Charter Schools.
Mm-hmm. So were you requesting today, I know that you initially when you came up was for the alternative school status, which I would recommend, that you continue with along that path for to go through that process. But something I hadn't thought of until today when you were speaking, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Dr. Lane.
Dr. Lane, thank you. It was a conversation even we were having about the testing, and when you think about how our English language learners are taking Azella, but we don't have any sort of a comparable accommodating assessment for the deaf population. So thank you for bringing that to light.
Our ideal would be the recommendation to have the NR rating. If we chose to go down the alternative pathway, our school-specific goals may not fall under the guidelines that have been set out by the State Board for Charter Schools. And again, because of the uniqueness of the population, the NR would be our phenomenal Christmas present.
Well, I'd like to second Member Burton's motion and just want to say thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
And members, just as another point of clarification, this whatever action and recommendation here, and then whatever action by the board would be a 1 year. I mean, this is kind of like a 1 year at a time kind of deal. This might be something that maybe the board wants to tackle as a broader policy outside of the appeals committee. But just wanted to point of clarification. And so, not to interrupt the motion that is out there, which is a motion by Member Burton and seconded by Member Kay to recommend a not rated for at Key Sequoia Deaf School for the 17-18 school year. So all those in favor of that?
Aye.
And so the motion passes. I also just realized if we have a motion and a second, we don't really need to vote, but I think maybe we want to get people on the record. Okay, so.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for getting us up.
Sure. Okay, so next up we have, and by the way, if members, if you feel like you want to break at any point, just cut me off and we'll jump to a break. But so next up we have Puente de Oso Bilingual Magnet School, and I think you guys are ready to rumble. So you're up.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Robert Kelty. I am the principal of Puente de Hojo Elementary School. I'm accompanied by Dr. Robert Hagstrom. He is the Director of Research and Assessment for Flagstaff Unified School Districts. I want to thank you for hearing our appeal today and begin by briefly telling you about Puente de Hojo. We are a trilingual school, a Navajo immersion program, and a Spanish-English bilingual program. We've been frequently recognized for our work.
It looks like no one else is going to join this call. Goodbye.
Sorry, bear with us.
That's okay. It did catch me off guard for a second.
We'll give you another minute.
Featured in American Indian Education, and two of those things I'd like to highlight is we were featured in the Harvard Educational Review for best practices in American Indian Education, and even received a visit by Governor Doug Ducey about 3 to 4 years back. We are here appealing our third grade ELA data as we feel as it was invalid in terms of the percent proficiency and growth. And if you look at our trajectory for our third grade ELA, in 2014, we were at 36%. In 2015, we increased to 40%. 2016, we increased to 43%. And then all of a sudden, we dropped off after seeing a substantial increase over time and seeing significant growth in fourth and fifth grade ELA in 2017. So what happened? We had significant and adverse testing conditions, and that substantially affected our overall school performance. And we had between 5 to 15 incidents per child in third grade kicked out and locked out of the AZ Merit. And because of that, we feel like the data was not valid. FUSD did respond immediately. We had them on site probably around 9:15, going through certain protocols to see if there was anything on our side of the computers, and they could not find anything. All our browsers were updated. All the steps that we needed to take had been taken, and they could not diagnose. So at that point, to just try to salvage our work, we switched to iPads around 1 o'clock, which gave us about an hour and a half of work. And even though I personally saw, and my proctors saw students lose their work, they trudged through to try to do their best. And at the end of the day, when we looked at our letter grade, despite a significant portion of the formula being invalid, we were still 0.26 points away from moving out of a D into a C status. So it was pretty gut-wrenching there. But we still wanted to make sure, so we cross-checked our end-of-the-year Quest data, which is what FUSD uses for ELA proficiency. And we ranged in the 60 to 51% by the end of the year. So our beginning Q1 ELA data was at 36%, so still over what we were at for the AZ Merit. And our Q4 end of year was 51.7%. And so late in nights when I'm thinking about this, I do dream that we had that 51.7 in our third grade ELA proficiency and thinking about what our letter grade could have been, because I do feel like our school is doing remarkable work. We also ran a correlating coefficient on the FUSD Quest test to see if it aligned with the AZ Merit like we thought, and we had a high correlation of 0.82. So very significant, so we feel very confident that our students were not represented. So consequently, we are asking the Appeals Committee to override our letter grade from a D to a C, as we feel our students would have demonstrated this proficiency level without the technology anomaly. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So I know how frustrating that is. I've had that happen at my school as well.
Okay.
And I probably shouldn't offer advice. But we did call, and our students are now able to, they're allowed to brainstorm and write a first draft on paper, which made it a lot easier if they got kicked out again. They weren't, coming up with the same idea again. But I don't know if that's still the case, so I just thought I'd throw that out there. But we've had the same problem. I just thought I'd mention that you're not alone.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, certainly look into that.
Anyone else?
I don't have any questions, just comment. Thank you for your application. You did a really nice job, I think, of documenting the issue and all of the steps that you took and then the data that you presented. I know those are the rules, but you did a really nice job with that. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Okay. I'd like to make a recommendation, a motion, thank you, for the recommendation to approve the letter grade change from C to D. Is that right?
No, D to C.
D to C. That's much better. I was reading it backwards.
Sorry.
I second.
Member Burton.
Okay. Member Broussard with the motion, Member Burton with the second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the motion passes.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Yes. Okay, members, so now we are on to school number 5, which is La Tierra Community School, and they're right behind me. And La Tierra Community School preliminarily received an F and is requesting a D or a C. So, go ahead.
Good afternoon. This is Dr. Studnicka, and
I'm Dawn Klaber.
I'm a school principal with maybe 57 hats at once in a small little charter school. And Ms. Claiborne?
I'm the first grade teacher / technology coordinator at our school.
So we are very grateful, expressing our deep gratitude for being seen and heard today. Thank you so much. Our school, I wrote a story about our school. The school is 9 years old, and I'm their 4th principal. And I came as a faculty from Prescott College that made the school happen in the first place, and took over a struggling school. We were losing enrollment, and our children are over 60% in a poverty level. So the money was not there. the sustainable plan was created, and we started with building grounds. We brought parents in. The community got really new passion for growing up our school. We jumped from 83 students to 135. We tested around 120. We are appealing our little failing grade because we scored 47.63, which is just one little hundredth point of 47.62, which would be D. There are several factors. One, which we are appealing, is to technology. We were able to purchase computers. Our children were testing paper tests. I talked to Mary Pat. I thought that we needed to have computer for every single child. She goes, no. You had enough of computers. You bought computers. Let's go and do computer-based tests. We trained our staff. And that day when we started, we provided breakfast for all of our kids who come without breakfast.
Everyone else had
so excited. And what happened is the computer didn't work with us. We had a lot of technical adversities, and Ms. Claiborne can attest to that.
Yes. Coming into the test and doing all of the research with my limited technology background, I thought that all of our computers were ready to go, and they were not. We didn't have the specific application on the computers that we needed to access the test. So after some calls to Apple and a failed attempt to get in touch with the Google Chrome technologists, I spent hours and hours trying to figure out how to get that application onto the computer. And so I do believe that that adversely affected the students who came to school ready and prepared to take a test. And they were not able to, because the computers were not functioning in a way that they could access the tests. We were able to get our Macs on board pretty quickly, but only a few of our students were able to take the test on the Macs. And so our Chromebooks took a little bit longer. So rather than taking their test on the day they were expecting to, the students had to wait a day to take their test. And then I believe once we did have them, we had that similar problem where students were getting booted out of their test. So a couple of our students experienced getting booted out of the test a few times, which I can only imagine how frustrating that is for little kids. As an adult, I feel frustrated when things like that happen and totally lose my focus. So I can definitely sympathize with a young person who doesn't quite have the brain development to navigate an issue like that.
What we did is, if you think about it, that the school went through so many changes and suddenly we're becoming sustainable and we're growing over 40% and buy computers and all this. So this was really unfortunate what happened because we are on it. This year is the curriculum planning. We have Galileo. When you look at our tests at Galileo, they do not reflect the failing school. On top of that, I am internationally involved with refugees and peace education. So our school is right now leading a peace education curriculum in Prescott. Even with failing letter, we immediately had a town hall and we called our parents. 99% didn't leave. They stayed with us, they trust us, they're supporting us. So it actually brought our community through this tragedy together, and we are appealing if we could please move it to later so we could continue our successful path and helping students to be responsible, wonderful peacemakers in this world. Thank you. Grateful.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? No questions.
Go ahead. You go. Oh, get the school name right. I recommend approval for La Tierra Community School to change their letter grade to a D.
Yes, and we'll surprise you next year, I promise. We'll do better.
Good luck. And I just want to clarify with Catcher, isn't it true going forward that taking the AZ Merit, you can right now have a paper pencil option? So should this not be quite where they want it, that will always be an option. That will be an option next year for these students.
Member Burton and members, absolutely, yes. So statutorily, schools have a right to request paper-based if they would like. And my understanding is that had always been the case, but there had been some pretty strong encouragement to go to computer-based. So if you feel pretty strongly that paper-based is best for your students, then you can request that.
I actually believe 21st century, if you look at online and all, we need to do computers. And what we are working is changing mindset right now with our parents, because we are kind of nature-based Scandinavian model school. And the thing is that our parents do not trust computers, and we're trying to train them and tell them, you need to help your children to really do this, because this is part of their reality. So we're going to do a lot of training. We already have twice a week implemented technology literacy for our students and for our parents as well. I'm doing parent workshops, so we would like to continue that. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we had a motion and a second. We just get a voice vote of all those in favor.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes. Okay, so moving right along, number 6 is Agua Fria High School. And thank you for those who I think I've already mentioned this before, but thanks for those who have been driving longer than some others. So, Agua Fria, take it away.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Ernest Molina. I'm the principal of Agua Fria High School. Grateful for the opportunity to be heard this afternoon. We are appealing from a label of a C to a B based on incorrect data. We feel that the documentation provided, along with the commentary accompanied by my colleagues, and we're just again grateful for the opportunity to be heard.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Tom Huffman. I'm Executive Director of Educational Services for the Agua Fria Union High School District. We don't even need to take all of our time today. We just thought it was important to show up here in person and to kind of reinforce our thought process in this appeal. When we received our original information, one of the things that did look a little interesting to us was the graduation rate, because it had shown different things throughout the year, and even during the summer it had shown over 90%. So we decided to dig into the 86.35%, and we wanted to recreate that number, and that's what we did on page 3 of this page of the actual appeal. And in doing so, we realized that the students that were listed as P, of which there were 27 of them, counted against our graduation rate. And we weren't even 100% sure what P meant for seniors, because P means promoted to the next grade, and it says it doesn't apply to graduating seniors. So we dug into not just those students, we decided to dig into all the kids in the graduation rate and to start individually trying to find out who they were. So that's what we have listed on page 4. And in there we found 24 students that had been listed as summer transfers. We provided in the first appendix the summer transfer list that we had submitted with ADE. So these are students that had transferred to other schools, just like a W1 student, just during the summer, but yet they were still counting against our graduation rate. Then we found 4 students that were transferred during the year, and it looked like those students are students that, when they left us, we'd received records requests, but then when the new school registered them, they gave them another SACE ID number. So they were still counting against us as well as being a new student at the other school. The third column down, we have 3 other students that transferred during that year, and we started a 915 report. I looked this morning, those 3 students are actually no longer counting against us now, so that has been updated since the appeal. Those 3 students, and we have actually filed another 915 report for some of the other students, but that one is not fully updated yet. And then the final student on there is a student that was a student at Mr. Molina's school. He ate in the cafeteria, he went to the classes, he walked across the stage, and Mr. Molina gave him a diploma. We included his transcript there. He's a school that there was a voucher program involved with the Arizona School for the Deaf and Blind, and our data processing person says that there's a piece of paperwork we need on their end to complete that student as a graduate. So then we did put as much of this information in there as we could. We have an appendix that shows the summer withdrawals, an appendix that shows the transfer request from the other schools to show that they did transfer. We show the graduation transcript for the one senior, as well as our initial request on the 915 reports. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
we're just looking over our
It's
own
okay.
notes.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to get clarification. So the students, were the codes inputted incorrectly initially, or I'm sorry, I was trying to follow, but
so we showed with the summer transfer, we show that the students show as S1 summer transfers. But on on ADE Connect, when we pull up our official report, they show as P. So they're still showing that they're counting against us where the transfers normally go away.
We found, sorry, my name is Sean Smith. I'm the Director of Assessment. I helped compile some of the data. So what we found the discrepancy was in one system, in the AZED system, all the paperwork had been filed correctly. And then when we go to the the ADE Connect graduation rate report, it doesn't reflect. So the two systems just kind of weren't talking to each other. That's where we found the discrepancy. I mean, we'd always move forward just in kind of good faith that the one matched the other. And like Mr. Huffman said, when we looked in and we said, well, let's try and reconstruct this student by student, we just realized that was an error, that in one system they were reported. We were able, we had all their transfer paperwork, and they didn't just reflect in the graduation rate report. So it was just kind of the two systems kind of weren't talking back and forth.
Who makes the report to those two separate systems, or do you just report to one and it gets transferred over? Basically, whose responsibility is it to make sure that those two systems are correct?
So that tends to go to our data department. So we have kind of the registrars and our data specialists report the withdrawals, and they report to that system. And then on the accountability side, we usually cross-reference those and see. We just hadn't.
So it's another district entity in there. Okay.
So realizing now we've kind of reallocated some personnel to address that, so we specifically monitor the disconnect between the two,
just to make sure that they're the same. Okay.
And there was a time where they were saying appeal this data, but at that time the graduation rate showed over 90%, and since then it went down. Like I said, then this morning it went back up again slightly. But either way, we didn't meet the 2% or the 90% threshold, and with those corrections, we would meet both those thresholds.
So the 915 that you filed, how many students would that impact?
So the first 915 was 3 students. The second one, I believe it still has us a student or two short, because we're only able to go back 2 years on 915 reports. We can't go back throughout all 4 of their years, is our understanding. That we could only do 17 and 16, we couldn't do 15 or 14.
Right. And so once that 915 is submitted, you've already submitted and it corrected. And did it affect your? That's where I'm kind of at a loss here. So,
so
if
the
it
first
affected,
one, we did 2 915s. The one is in there, and it has been updated, and that improved us by 3 students. And that I mentioned, and then we have another one that's for a handful of more students. If all of those are still corrected on that 915 report, we're still short of the threshold we need. So that's where these other students come in.
Won't change your grade.
It still does not get us high enough for the 2% threshold or the 90%.
Okay.
If I can speak to that as well, the majority of them were the 24 students that had left, say, between their freshman and their sophomore year in the summer. They'd gone to another school. So at any point in their 4 years, if they'd just gone re-enrolled in another school over the summer, those 24 kids were reflected correctly in AZEDs, but not in our graduation rate. So with the 24, most of them were kids that had just gone through a normal process. They'd gone to another school, transcripts were sent and everything. The bulk of those 24 kids were the biggest ones where they were already in the system, but just still remained counting against they showed on our books as still at our schools, even though maybe they hadn't been with us for 2 or 3 years. They'd left during the summer.
Okay.
So. And those students bring us up. Those students bring us up from about an 85% graduation rate to around 93.
And those are the students listed in the first appendix.
Okay. The S1 codes?
The S1 codes.
Okay.
That shows them correct in AZEDs.
Okay, so but if even those are in there, it's not going to change your letter grade.
Those absolutely would.
Yes.
And you did. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, can we have the department weigh in on this? I'm a little confused and feel like I'm hearing one thing and then another. I mean, I just like.
And it's not your, I
No,
want
I mean,
to
this
make
is-
sure
yeah.
that I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we're waiting on, basically the correct data and why don't you just fill us in?
Members, thank you. Aquafrio, right? Okay, make sure I got the right one. ADE Connect is a live system. It will fluctuate. So, for example, if you put something in and then it's not verified by another school, so it's not like a static file. So relying on ADE Connect graduation, that will always go up and down.
Okay.
The static file is probably what you always want to look at the best. I went back and looked at the notes that Caitlin in our department looked at all the kids, and there was issues with being categorized incorrectly and inputted incorrectly. And I'm looking at my notes here. Give me just a second. Maybe. There we go. And a couple of the kids, they were unenrolled before the enrollment date. So if there's new things that came before, everything we looked at and verified would not impact their grades. So if it's something different than they submitted in the original appeal, we'd go back and look.
And that's where I was confused because
we looked at what was originally submitted.
If you have others that you're submitting a 15.915 for, that could change that data, then that will affect your grade.
Right, and we can't submit an additional 915 because we can't go back far enough. So that's why we're looking at the AZ Eds where they show as summer transfers.
Right. Oh. So how would AZ Eds feed into the department static file? How are those related? Sorry.
Okay, we'll say AZ Ed's the big master mothership. We'll go with that. Then it feeds into certain data tables, and then accountability creates what's called a fiscal enrollment table. There's also a graduation table that has its own separate rules. So it's not a simple thing about how it feeds in. Then we pull the graduation rate into accountability. And like they said, school finance will not let you do 915s because when you do 915s, nobody wants to do 915.
Right.
So
There are big
congratulations for
implications.
taking the effort. But there's a certain point where you cannot correct that data. What we're seeing and what I understand is some things that look like they were a transfer that they unenrolled before the enrollment day started.
Yeah.
So I don't know, without looking at each specific child, that's what we have in our notes.
So that would make sense if you knew they were leaving at the end of the year, you unenrolled them, and then they got re-enrolled someplace else, but...
Or they enrolled them somewhere else, but they left before school started.
I see.
But they're still counting against us.
Correct.
Because they were from a previous year and you can't correct that data.
But I am not comfortable without looking specifically at each kid that they're talking about. The ones that were sent in, we looked at those, and that was a statement. We would not see a change of the impact of their grade. But if there's additional information, then we'd be more than happy to look, time permitting.
Yeah. I guess I'm looking for kind of a recommendation of options.
So members, I guess the committee has a couple options. I think the crux of the question is that...
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Wendy and the department. I think the crux of the question is something that we're going to deal with appeals detailing incorrect data, is that if it does not impact their letter grade, then we are probably going to be recommending on a staff level to dismiss, because the whole ADF appeals process and this committee reviews that letter grade determination, not necessarily changing data underlying, but if the data that is incorrect would point to a change in letter grade, that's when we are considering those. So initially we have the department saying that based on the appeal that was submitted, it would not impact the letter grade, in which case staff would then recommend dismissal. If the committee feels that they want to provide the school with some additional opportunity to work with the department's accountability team to try to provide some of that additional data, and it sounded like the accountability team would be happy to do that, that might be another option, in which case the committee maybe would table the appeal until a later date to allow some time for additional review. I would have to think about and maybe confer with some folks on if the appeals committee would have to re-meet and have another presentation or how that would work. But those are probably details that we could figure out later. So I think those are probably the two options, because I don't think staff would feel comfortable recommending approving it when the department's saying that it wouldn't impact. So I think those are probably the two options in front of the committee.
Can I ask a question? Is there new data? So the question was, from the department, based on the data that they looked at and had at the time when the appeal was submitted, this is the conclusion that they came to. Has something new emerged?
What I'm hearing is not that something new has emerged. I'm hearing a disconnect in what we're saying, that they're saying one thing and we're saying something else.
Okay.
If I may, members of the committee, the question I heard earlier was, would this impact our label and identifying going student by student? And we have gone student by student for every kid that was in the grad rate through ADE Connect. And that's each of those students, or the documentation that you have that shows where they registered and that they were enrolled in schools, all of those. But then I heard on the other side that there was no new information, but we do have, of all of those students that were in that S1 category, are enrolled in another school, yet we're counting in ADE Connect against our grad rate. And that would obviously significantly impact our letter grade.
And we are saying that even if they did withdraw before they ever enrolled, then they can't count against us on grad rate also.
Right.
Okay.
Can I weigh in as well? So Ms. Davies from the department is 100% correct. Like, it did require a student by student, and if there is a possibility where we could look through, because that was our first point of addressing the issue, is let's see if we can make what was in the A through F static file match the numbers that we're seeing. So we tried to do the math exactly. Okay, we've got 381 here, we've got this here. So we redid that student by student to see if those numbers matched, and then we did that work to account for each student. So if there was a possibility to kind of look over with them and see where those discrepancies are, because I think it is, they are correct. It does require a student by student going back and kind of tracing them through a system.
So I feel like there may have been a misunderstanding as to what your appeal was based on, and possibly, I don't know, maybe the department looked at something related but different, if this makes sense. So I would feel better about tabling this and letting them sit down with the department and take a look at this, just to make sure we are talking apples to apples.
And I would second that motion to table.
Okay, so we have a motion from Member Broussard and a second by Member Burton to table this appeal and to have Agua Fria work with the department to try to get some clarity on whether those students would impact, and then they can return either to the committee or to the board, perhaps. And actually, I'm just doing this on the fly. Maybe we can try to schedule something for the meeting on the 17th. Okay. I don't know if that is too short of a turnaround, but we might be able to try to get something that same day. Okay, so that's the motion. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously. So just moving forward, and I do want to put this out there, and I don't mean to be the bureaucrat who is doing bureaucratic stuff, but I do want to emphasize that schools had an opportunity to validate and check their data over the summer, and ADE, I think, has done a great job of trying to reach out to schools on that. And I just want to make sure that in the future, and we're certainly, I think staff is comfortable with tabling this too, because we're not in any rush, and this is part of what this process is for. And incorrect data is definitely something that you can appeal, but also want to encourage, like in the summer, if we can get out in front of that stuff moving forward, that'd be great. But
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have number 8. Again, number 7, Booth Fickett withdrew their appeal. So we're just going to be moving on to number 8, which is Fountain Hills Charter School. And take it away.
Members of the committee, thank you for your presence. My name is Doug Pike from the Fountain Hills Charter School. As has been submitted to you and you've had the opportunity to review, there are a number of items that we have put forward, particularly that affected the conditions and and environment of the test. However, the reality is that the unknown quantity is in a school with 3 classrooms that were being tested, that you have the death of one of the teachers in the middle of the testing. The impact of that is unknown and uncertain. I can't point to anything to tell you that this is how the students are going to react or what the differential will be. We believe that we were brought into a school that was on a downward trend and that we were doing what we could to change that and to turn it around. We do believe that last year would not have been a turnaround year, that we didn't expect great results, but we didn't expect these results. And we do believe that that what we've been able to see to start with is positive, and we look forward to having that be the case. We only asked for the F to be changed to a D so that accountability was still in place and still being worked on with the school. And with that, I'm present to answer any of your questions.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, well then I would like to move to recommend approval for Fountain Hills Charter School letter grade change from a F to a D.
I'll second.
And members, can we, just for the record, and so when it comes to the board, I mean, it's beneficial because you guys are on the board, so that helps. But just the reasons for, specifically on this one, because I think school tragedy. Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to make sure, because there were several things cited in the appeal, but okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Okay, and the motion passes.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Okay, next up is number 9, Payson High School. Is Mr. Wyman, and he is making his way up to the front.
Good afternoon, members of the Appeals Committee. My name is Greg Wyman. I'm the superintendent in Payson. This is Jeff Simon. He's a principal at Payson High School, and Brenda Case, director of student achievement. We are making an appeal really based on accountability, the belief that everybody needs to be held accountable in terms of the data that's present. I will tell you up front, as I did in my appeal, this will not change our letter grade. This is about a bigger concept that applies to potentially schools across the state. And it's the concept of co-enrolled students. We have 3 high schools in Payson. We have Payson High School, which is a traditional high school, Payson Center for Success, which would be an alternative high school, and Payson Center for Success Online, which would be an AOI. We have many situations, and we'll focus in on just one situation, but we have many situations where kids may be co-enrolled. Those students are counted. So if I have a student that goes to PCS, Payson Center for Success, takes a 4-hour block in the morning, which is primarily academic classes, and then goes down to the high school in the afternoon for an elective like FFA or welding. They are placed on both roles of the cohort for those students who must be tested. Yet when they're tested, only PCS gets the credit for the test. PHS does not get the credit for the test. In and of itself, I have concerns with that, but in speaking with ADE at a meeting, they let us know that if I was a student at Payson High School and I W1, I left Payson High School and transferred to any school, any high school in the state, and I enrolled there and I took the test, my name would have been on both schools and I would have gotten credit for testing on both schools. So if we're going to go ahead and hold the rules and be accountable, they have to be applied in a fair and consistent manner. I understand this is a business rule. I walked in a few minutes late, so I don't know all the conversation before the meeting started. But the issue at hand for us, although it won't change our score this year, we have an alternative school which it could have an impact in the future. And there are other high schools in other districts I've been in that are very similar to the co-enrolled situation that we have. And so there's a real concern that there's not an equitable solution for this situation. And so in our appeal, we provide, again, I guess if we want to stay within data, we would provide some specific examples of kids that we think should have gotten credit for testing. But then even more so in the bigger picture, it's just how are we going to treat these kids that are co-enrolled in 2 different schools in terms of who should be on the individual cohort to be tested And then if they are tested, who should get credit for the test? And we just think it's a critical issue. And again, understand the business rule. You may have received, if not, I know I sent it to Alicia, a letter from me raising this very issue for that point. This is, to me, more than anything else, quite frankly, a matter of principle. If we're going to hold people accountable and we're going to use data to hold people accountable, then it ought to be applied equally to all individuals that might be in that situation. That's why we have chosen to come down and, again, speak to this issue, even though it will not have an impact on our grade whatsoever. We are more than happy to address any concerns or questions you might have about specific kids that we have taken a look at, but really it's just an issue that we think this is being demonstrated through the W1 kids that you can give credit to two schools. So give credit to two schools in both of these situations. More than happy to answer any questions if you have some.
Dr. Wyman, and I'll thank you for coming down. I don't have any questions. I do want to say, though, that I appreciate you raising the concern. I think it's definitely something that we need to explore on a go-forward in terms of the business rules. I agree with you that if we're going to apply a rule, we need to do it consistently. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. And members, just really quickly, for the record, I think Superintendent Wyman submitted a letter. We did provide that,
yes.
And that was provided.
And so I know that the concerns that you mentioned here are important to us as well. And those will be brought to our data group for consideration as a recommendation for any changes to the 19A through F system. So,
and I would be more than happy to come down and speak with that group if so.
All right, we'll make sure that's noted. So on that note, may I? Okay, yes. So I move to provide a recommendation for dismissal for Payson High School.
Second.
Oh, for incorrect data. That was cited, right? Didn't you want? It's not what you told me to.
Yes.
Am I following the right directions
yes,
here?
No, that's sufficient. Thank you. There's a motion from Member Broussard and a second by Member Kay, and all those in favor.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. So next up, we have Cienega High School from Vail, and I think they're both in the audience.
Use the mouse.
Yeah, or the keyboard even, if you get into the PowerPoint.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing our team from the Vail School District to come to today's appeal for Cienega's A through F letter grade. I got to tell you, it was pretty humbling getting to sit to the different groups come up here and how prepared they were. We hope we do justice to their efforts as well. My name is Aaron Schmidt. I'm the Director of CT and High School Instruction for the Vail School District. I'm accompanied by our K-12 Curriculum Coordinator, Brandy Dwemich. Based on Vail enrollment data and the ADE A through F file, it's evident that Cienega High School tested the appropriate number of students for the AZ Merit Assessment, and based on their results, reached the proficiency level needed to elevate their score from a B to an A. We believe there is a discrepancy in the actual number of students tested at Cienega that is affecting their A through F grade. And we don't want to jump into conclusions as to why, but one reason we think it could be likely is due to the number of unique students that attend Cienega High School. They're kind of a hub in our community for ROTC and marching band, and about 10% of their student population actually only comes to their school for that one day, and all of those students show up on that A through F state sheet twice. In addition to that, we have about 40% of students that accelerate in math, and so we have a very large number of freshmen and sophomores who will never take a math exam at Cienega High School, but will be or should be eligible for percent tested in A through F, just due to the business rules definition of percent tested. In Vail, we take state assessments and accountability very seriously. Last year, when our high schools underperformed in Algebra 2, we worked as a district team at each site to enhance interventions and help support student success. When CCRI was added to the school label, we initiated supports that helped support college and career readiness for our families and our community. The difficult part with the percent tested is right now, based on the appeal will go through, we don't have anything we can go back to the school and tell them they need to fix. Right? And that's kind of the goal of accountability in A through F, is to be able to identify what's wrong, go back and fix it so that you can better education for your community and for your stakeholders. We thank you for taking time to look through this appeal today, and also for time to help fine-tune an A through F system that we think is pretty great. We think it's done some great change for us, and we just want to help make it better. So, I won't make it a long story of compliance and accountability. What I will tell you is we have really consistent processes at each of our schools to make sure our students are testing. We have site assessment personnel. They're full-time people who work at the site, and all they deal with is online formatives, online benchmarks, and online AZ merit tests. And we're very good at making sure we have every student test. So good, in fact, that you look at the second bullet, you can see our district-wide testing percentage outside of Cienega High School is over 99% for this last fiscal year. And that's the same practices and policies we apply at Cienega as well. We like to use all the different state resources. Our student achievement teachers, who are our assessment personnel, they meet monthly to go over the different practices and business rules. Long story short, we feel that we have a really strong understanding of AZ merit, the testing process, and the A through F formula, and that's why it caught us off guard so much when we noticed that Cienega High School's letter grade had a very low proficiency score compared to last year, and it had a very low testing percentage compared to the other schools in our school district. We worked, and I got to give them a really big shout out. I know that Catcher did already, but the Department of Education was extremely helpful in working through this problem, sharing business rules with us, and helping us to try to identify who these students are who came up as not tested on our score report. Essentially for us, working with them and being able to kind of identify those is what gave us the confidence to appeal today. So real quick, we looked at that proficiency score. It was lower than it was in the past, and 17.88 is what it was in our report card. Last year, it was 17.74, I believe, or 19.74. The nice part about the business rules is that you can hand calculate proficiency. It is as easy as a math problem. There's a numerator, a denominator, some multiplication, and some addition. It's listed in there, and there's even a step-by-step in the business rules to help you. So it's there to be transparent. When you walk through that process using our A through F profile, the ADE static sheet, and the report card, you're able to actually see our proficiency score would have been 19.44 points, not 17.88. Just so you know, the gap between there's the difference between a B and an A for us. All right, after we went through that, we kind of kept reading through the business rules and identified that clearly there was a penalty that was given to us because of Cienega's low percent tested, which did not meet the 95% tested benchmark, which was also a shock to us, just so you know. We wanted to make sure we did our due diligence. We did 2 different investigations. The first, we contacted the accountability department, and they gave us a really nice walkthrough on how to find out which students were counting against us for not tested. The nice part with that, too, there's a beautiful little AZ Merit data portal, and you can use the SACE number of a kid, and you can find out if they've ever taken an end-of-course assessment. And as anyone familiar with the business rules would understand, if you've taken an end-of-course assessment before, you're good for the 95% tested. It is a pretty wide margin we're given at the high school level to reach percent tested. It's not who tested this year. It's has the student ever tested at a high school level. Utilizing that data portal, we investigated 189 students, and nearly all of them had tested. 161 of them, by the way, either fell into one of 2 buckets. They were students who were concurrently or co-enrolled within our own school district at a different high school, and predominantly in that situation, they took all of their classes at the other high school, maybe took ROTC or marching band at Cienega. About another 80 of them were students who had accelerated so far in math that they weren't eligible to take any math exam during their sophomore year. 16 of them were MSSA eligible, and about the rest, probably about 7 or 8, were inconclusive. I say inconclusive because I think we could do deeper investigation if we left our own data systems to find out why they made it on that list. But based on the investigation using the ADE data, we were able to show that over 95% of our students should have been eligible, which would have prevented us from having a penalty on our proficiency. not to be stopped, we also went ahead and actually did an enrollment report for who is actually present during the testing window. It's a nice thing because you only have to pick on the 10th graders, right? So in this case, there was only 399 kids we had to look up for 2 different tests, so 798 tests that we made sure that we confirmed using the last 4 years of AZ Merritt High School end of course assessment data. And using that investigation, we were also able to find that over 95% of the students were eligible to be counted towards 95%. Some potential variances we noticed in the data. We're not coming here today guaranteeing we have the problem. I think that the ADA through F formula on the back end of the computer stuff is probably one of the more complicated things happening in the department, and so we're fully aware of that. One really big outlier, over 80 scores, which is 10% of our 10th grade class at Cienega, were concurrently enrolled for the majority of their day at another Vail school. The second one we noticed, of course, was that a big chunk of students had already either completed their AZ Merit requirements or were MISA eligible, which means they don't have to test until they're in the 11th grade. And so that's kind of how that alternative assessment works for those students. Formerly, it was the AIMS-A. Interesting to note, we have a program, it's a high school program, a digital learning program at down the road from Cienega in a building. And it's the only other outlier we had in terms of percent tested. And it's a school that goes 6 through 12. The 6 through 8 portion where the kids are 0% co-enrolled at 98% testing rate. The 9 through 12 portion, where if you're an online kid in high school, you want to grab little bits of things and go around the district and do it. The high school portion of that school, same procedures, same teachers, same everything, was 46.92% tested. I can tell you over 50% of the kids in that group were also co-enrolled at a different school for an elective class, possibly ROTC or marching band. I don't know the answer, but I do know that Cienega shares the common systems and processes that we use district-wide. And that process has led to over 99% of our kids meeting percent tested. Cienega has proficiency data that without a penalty is more than enough to move them up to A status. All possible enrollment data has been cross-checked with the AZ Merit Data Portal. And finally, we really did find we have a lot of co-enrollment that occurs at Cienega specifically. We have quite a number of high schools in our district, but that's the one school where we actually bus kids to in order for them to take part of some programs that we can't offer district-wide. We really think that there's some abnormalities and variances in the state data, and it's, like I said, it's one of the first times going through the state data. It's a huge beast. I think, as they mentioned earlier, AZEDS is its own beast, and then you got the A through F mingling with it. But we think there's enough abnormalities to suggest that it affected Cienega High School school label. Based on our findings, we do request that the board considers an increase of Cienega's proficiency score by 1.56 points, which is what you can calculate by hand if you were to go back through it following the state-provided business rules. And we think it should change the school from a B to an A. And more importantly, we want to be able to go back to our school district and explain to them why they got an A or what they have to do to improve in the future. And unfortunately, as it sits today, using the data available through ADE or even our internal records, all we can say is that we think they should have got the A. So thank you. Any questions?
You mentioned the dual enrollment also as an issue, just like
concurrent enrollment.
Co-enrollment. Yeah. Thank you. Just as Payson did, correct? Same situation. So that's something that we'll also take note of. Go ahead.
So in part of our materials, it looked like there was a comment in terms of the calculation that the district did versus the ADE calculation. Can somebody speak to that?
Yeah, Member Kay, I think maybe this one's an appropriate one to ask. You know, this one's really just about the data, and does the data indicate that there should be a different letter grade or not, as opposed to some of the others where there's events and things, those sorts of things. So I think maybe asking the department, you know, what their thoughts are on this one would be appropriate, if they would be so kind?
Board, Vail.
Thank you.
It is a challenge with the co-enrolled. Basically, if you're enrolled in a school on that first day of testing, you're included in percent testing. This is our first year for the 95% tested, and as you can see, based on the appeals, this probably takes a good chunk of that. We did go back and we recalculated. You don't want to use AZ Merit data, the AZ Merit testing portal. That's pre-integrity data. It goes through some processes after that, so we wouldn't pull from that to do any kind of verification. He is correct on the MSAA, and that is something the technical committee should look at for percent tested. We did calculate, basically we took the code and we pulled out any penalty for 95% tested for well over a dozen schools, including Seneca, and we did not see that it would increase them by the 1.56. The highest percentage we saw increase was a smaller school at a 0.5.
Okay. Thank you.
If I can make one comment, because I do appreciate the comments made by the department. This is supposed to be a transparent process. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to feel like a fair game, right? You give directions on how to calculate and do something. You're given an A through F letter grade report that specifically states the number of kids that fell into each category. You are given a total number of students that the department feels that you tested on that same A through F sheet, and they give you a set of directions to tell you how to calculate it. It's not that, well, I guess it is. I don't think that our school only increased by 0.1. I think it's very straightforward and set out to show in a very transparent manner, which is the most important part of accountability, because when you lose that, you lose the whole thing, that you can by hand calculate using some 5th grade math that the score increase should be greater than 0.1. And I just feel that for the integrity of the A through F system, we need to either have that information on what we missed, or we need to fix something else so that we can go back and feel comfortable moving forward.
I understand. So I know that in your appeal you had listed actually an equation that you used to come up with the 19.44?
That's accurate, yeah.
Right? Okay. And I just want to clarify, was that the number that was not correct, that you were talking about doing the calculations and it didn't come up to, is that the number that
we wouldn't hand calculate that way? It's actually written in code.
Oh.
But basically, where they're coming from in large schools, there's rounding issues, not 1.5, but you could see a variance of 0.5, 0.4, depending on what statistical package you're using. We are more than welcome to, we'd be more than happy to go back and rerun it again, but we have checked, but we'd be more than willing to check again. It just, we're not, actually the impact of 95% isn't what it was meant to be. The hammer was really not there. We weren't seeing a large impact, even at some of the smaller schools.
So you can't just run that equation and come up with the correct number because it's encoding. Sorry.
Go back. No, that's okay.
Because I ran the equation. The reason why I'm asking is I did the equation that was in your paperwork, not checking to make sure that specific equation, but using the numbers that you gave me, and I did come up with 19.44. So that's where I just needed some clarification there.
We would want to go back. We want to I wish we could calculate it by hand, but that's not the system that has been built.
Well, thanks for telling me, because I spent some time on that math problem. I think I've got it.
But you got to remember is you got to put in, you're putting it in the denominator, so it's not just as simple. You have to put the kids back in that would have been taken out.
Okay.
And so it's just not a matter of subtracting. And like I said, if you're a smaller school, you put in 5 kids. It's a lot different than if you're a big school and you put in 5 schools. So I would want to make sure that we did the math the way that the state was calculated. And like I said, I wish as we move forward we could build a better, more hand calculated, but at the current way, that is not the way the system has been built.
Thank you. Ahead.
would like to point out that the formula I pulled was straight from the board-approved business rules.
So members, it sounds like we might be sort of in a similar situation with Agua Fria in that maybe the committee doesn't want to pit a school against what the department is saying. And so I think one option, just like with Agua Fria, is potentially to recommend tabling it, requesting that Vail work with the accountability folks and requesting that the accountability team try to walk through each of those calculations, make sure that they're accurate for the 95% tested. If there are some issues with 95% tested that would impact their letter grade, maybe that's something that the committee can look at December 17th. If it's more of a transparency business rule issue, then of course that's something else. But that might be an option for the committee, just like with Agua Fria.
And I kind of go, and I might be alone up here, towards a dismissal only because I think that it's a business rule issue with the transparency and you're not being able to calculate that number. But I'm going to let these two ladies, I just wanted to be transparent with you on that.
I think I would prefer to table it and have them work with the department just so that we have some certainty around that.
I would second that motion.
Okay.
If that's a motion.
It is a motion.
A motion from Member Kay and a second from Member Burton to table the appeal until tentatively our next meeting, whenever that may be, and requesting Vail to work with the accountability folks and accountability. Hopefully not getting too much extra work for them, we'll work with them. Okay, all those in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay, and so that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Members, next up we have Copper Canyon High School, which is along with a few other schools, I think. Is it time? Remember, we've been going at it for about 2 hours now. Do we need a break?
I'm thinking one more. Are you okay with one more?
One more.
One more. I was looking at the 2 o'clock mark on there. So.
May I present on behalf of all 5 of our high schools?
Yes. Yeah. And so, well, that was members. That was actually what I was going to bring up. Is that Tolleson has the next 5 appeals,
okay.
And so we could take all 5 at once, or take a break, or.
We have about a 20-minute presentation. Where are you at?
Let's do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes, sorry.
All right. Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Board, for having us to appeal this afternoon for specifically Sierra Linda High School. We're seeking to move Sierra Linda High School from a D to a C, and also to offer information on behalf of all of our Tolleson Union comprehensive high schools. I'm Dr. Michelle Wilson. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Tolleson Union High School. Our Superintendent, Nora Gutierrez, sends her regards. She has a family emergency, or she would be here this afternoon. Also with me this afternoon is Don Fournier. He is our data consultant for the district. Our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Vicki Landis, and our principal here, Mrs. Mindy Marset or Westover, excuse me, Mindy. We have name change from Copper Canyon High School. So I'll present the appeal this afternoon, but don't hesitate to stop us as we go if you have any questions, and we'll present our information. So most important, I know you have 5 packets in front of you, but please pull Sierra Linda High School's packet because that's the most important one that you'll want to reference as we move forward. So we appeal as a district, and specifically for Sierra Linda High School, under the category incorrect data outside of the school's control, and the opportunity did not exist for the school or the LEA to minimize impact on students. First, we want to say thank you to the Accountability Department. They've been very helpful to us, Wendy especially, You've been incredibly patient. Oh, she just left. She's been incredibly patient in helping us with our process. And we specifically understand that the state will be serve the entire state. So we just want to give a little background snapshot of us, Tolleson, so you know all 5 of our comprehensive high schools. We serve about 12,000 students in the West Valley. We're part of a very fast-growing West Valley. We are a majority district, so you have a sense of us. We are a Title I district, and we have less than 12% of our students who are non-minority. And while our namesake is Tolleson, our district is distributed across 4 municipalities. Mindy School is in Glendale. We are in Avondale. We're opening our new high school in Avondale as well. We are in the city of Tolleson and Phoenix, and our comprehensive high schools range from 1,900 students to 2,550 students. We are part of the fast-growing West Valley, as I said, and our newest high school, West Point, opens just for freshmen and sophomores in the fall. Today we appeal specifically with information for Copper Canyon High School, information for La Jolla Community High School. We do appeal for Sierra Linda High School, information for Tolleson Union High School, and for Westview High School. We come to you sincerely today, and we believe that you will honestly consider the nature of our appeal, incorrect data, that many elements were outside of our control, and this did not allow us the opportunity to minimize impact on our students. We appeal also for stakeholders who aren't here today. Some of them wanted to be here. We didn't invite all 12,000, okay? Our principals, they all wanted to be here today. Our assistant principals wanted to be here. Our staff, many of them wanted to be here. Our students, our parents, and our community. They're very concerned about the D-rating for Sierra Linda High School, and particularly since Sierra Linda High School increased their performance significantly on AZ Merit. And that is the expectation in the Tolleson Union High School District. We expect increased performance on AZ Merit. So the Tolleson Union High School community is a blue-collar community, below the median income, just so you know, but they support public education and they support our schools. That's really indicated on our last 3 override elections. All 3 of them passed with predominantly very strong margins. So just so we know a sense of our community. And we're all aware of the impact that school funding and letter grades have together. So that's why we stand here today. Most people cannot understand the complex formula, and I'm sure you're aware that business rules changed abruptly, and honestly, we were practically unaware last spring, but they can't understand the formula changes, particularly for secondary because they're incredibly complex. But our community does understand the power of these letter grades. So that's part of the reason why we're here. And note, 11 of the 19 appeals today are public secondary schools. So that's another reason why we took the time to come here today and to speak to you on behalf of our 5 schools. It's especially important in light of the fact that the 9-12 assessment to measure performance isn't even determined yet for this year. We have been advised that the business rules will change again in January. But we are in professional development and benchmarking for business rules that we don't even know what they are yet today for this year. And we take our school labels very seriously. We're here because our data issue lies with percent tested. And in some cases, in Sierra Linda's case, graduation rate. And we did include our 915 students as well. We have our 4 students. We have provided the data for those, and those, in fact, do make the difference for them to go from the D to the C. We received our guidance from the Arizona Department of Education, the testing department. These people serve to advise Vicki. Vicki corresponds back and forth from the testing department to, quote, test students who had completed the course. Now, think about that. Who's, quote, completed the course? Well, that means at the first semester in high school, if you have, quote, completed the course, you take the assessment in the spring. But if you haven't completed the course, you don't take the assessment. That means you don't take your Algebra 1 assessment, your Algebra 2, or Geometry, or your English 9, English 10, or English 11 until you're in a trailer class or in summer school. So when we were in the 17 business rules, This didn't impact our percent tested. So our percent tested was 91% for Mindy School, 92% at Tolleson High School, 93%. We've always followed this. This was the guidance. If, as a matter of fact, Vicki was advised, she had to follow this advice and train our assistant principals to follow these procedures. Thus, we did. And when we reached out later on with Wendy, we found out we weren't the only school following these procedures in the state. When the new business rules changed, our percent tested significantly dropped down to like 82%, 83%, 80%. But we are compelled to follow the directions from the testing coordinator from the Arizona Department of Education. We have no option. It became outside of our control, and it impacted our students. Our other concern was the business rules changed in June, and we didn't know that they had changed. And when we received the automatic score in our static file of the 0, from here forward, the static file was changed. So we had no way of knowing like how the students would score. For instance, we have students in districts in all of our schools who do very well in classes but score poorly on AZ Merit and vice versa. So we were at a loss. Our static file was from there forward, had these automatic zeros put in it. If we wanted to run it from the old 17 rules, the zeros were in there. The file was forever changed. And this is why I'm asking to please hold us harmless. I've spent hours thinking, if I were you in your position, what would be fair? What could possibly be fair? I put one thing on the table. Give us our graduation rate points. Sierra Linda, just give us our points, our 5 points. Let us walk out the door. It's closed. But I kept thinking, we're not the only school. We heard from Wendy. They're not the only school that received this advice. I thought, give the schools their bonus points. They fairly earned their bonus points. Hold the schools harmless. Give them their points. Or use both sets of cut scores. Because I have attended every state board meeting for a year and a half now, and I was here during the unanimous vote with little discussion, and I kept thinking, did everybody know about the 9/12 business rule changes during the unanimous vote when option 1 and option 2 were provided? Could they have possibly known that the business rules had changed so dramatically? Because I'll be honest, I didn't know, and it's my job. And neither did many of my colleagues. I know this because I've been reaching out to them, and we have been unraveling this since the business rule changed, which came out, just so everyone in the room knows, in transparency in a public meeting in June in the grader on about page 3 in a small paragraph. I forwarded it. It just said 2018 business rules. The new updated 2018 business rules are here. I forwarded them to Vicki and to my programmer. We were getting the static file out, which was a new process. We hadn't done that before. And it had, in our case, 48,000 characters of data to verify. So we hadn't done that. We were learning, and we just got the CCRI up. We waited a little time, and then we thought, hey, we did better on AZ Merit on almost all of our assessments. Certainly, our letter grades. What would you think if you were leading a district? What would you think if you were leading a school? Would you think your letter grades were going down? Sierra Linda High School has the top English language arts scores in our district. And I'll rival them in many cases to Title I schools in the state. And yet, their letter grade is a D. So as I stand before you today, I urge you to strongly consider. Give us our graduation rate points, certainly. It's there in the packet. We've got our 4 students. Absolutely look at giving the schools in the state their bonus points. They earned them. I don't know what happened why the bonus points were applied last year and not this year. And absolutely look at both sets of cut scores for secondary. Hold our schools harmless. I thank you sincerely for your time today, and I open it up for any questions that you might have for the Tolleson Union High School District.
I'm just getting some additional stuff up. I didn't want to do this while you were talking.
So there was a lot of information that you presented, and several schools. So in terms of the graduation rate, if those points were given to you, does that change your grade or your score?
For Sierra Linda?
Sierra Linda.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We have 3 high schools that, I have 2 that it would not change their letter grade, but it could potentially give them 5 points. Sierra Linda High School does have 4 students that we could find, 3 from 2015, 1 from 2017. It could potentially change Sierra Linda High School's letter grade. For transparency in the room, I don't know if it's been discussed. For all of our schools, if 2017 were open, and I think, is Wendy back? Oh, hi, Wendy. I thanked you. You were gone. For all your help. I think the concerns, perhaps, I haven't heard any school district raise it yet, but I think a concern that districts have is that in 2017 could have some fiscal ramifications for schools. Sure. But absolutely, we have enough students that it could potentially, yes. Short answer, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I just opened a new computer that has your packet on here, so that's what I'm looking at.
I would like to hear from the department about the whole course completion issue, because that does seem to not be consistent with who takes the test and who doesn't. If they haven't completed it, or if they haven't passed the course.
And I have an email we could forward and share as well. The rules have always been, if you are in a course and you are taking it for credit, that you test. And
regardless if you pass or not.
Regardless if you pass or not. And that has been the consistent message that goes out from assessment, but I would want them to come and address it. That's the practice I followed in a previous life. Mm-hmm. If they are in the course and they are intending, whether they're failing or not, to get credit at the end of the course, they should test.
And your understanding is different?
Well, our understanding was prior to the guidance that we received from the testing department. I did provide the email in your folder. Mm-hmm. So, yes, so that's why we verified it. We are compelled to follow the directions of the department. Hmm.
And you're saying for Sierra Linda, it would change your letter grade if
the graduation rate.
If the grad rate was recalculated, or
there are 3 ways that Sierra Linda would have it. If Sierra Linda got had the bonus points applied that they earned, that would change their graduation rate. That would change their letter grade. If Sierra Linda had their graduation rate if we had the 915 applied, if that would be another way, or if the cut scores were applied, the second set of option 2 of the cut scores were applied, that would be another way that the letter grade would change. They need just under 2 points.
And so I know that I had noted on here that I had a question about the AZ Merit summer testing. It's required but not calculated in.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So we did an extensive summer testing for our students. We had 1,200 students in regular summer school, and then another 200 in Title I summer school for our incoming incoming ninth graders. And so we tested them, and we also ran a really extensive accelerated math program in summer school where some of our students scored almost 80 on AZ Merit, but we couldn't get our scores in because I guess we're told that when you write there's guidance that the summer scores, the students are counted in your number of students tested, but their actual scores aren't counted. And I felt like that was an opportunity. At least we could assume some of the students, we had given them free summer school through Title I, so we could start to make some assumptions that these would be the scores of the kids who didn't pass, right? Because we had said, here's your summer school, sign up. This is your opportunity to gain your credit. Mm-hmm. And they tested. So I thought it just started to make sense to address this.
Is the time frame, it's the time frame that doesn't work, that you can't include those scores
I don't know,
it's too late?
I think Wendy said that it's just been determined that the scores don't count over time when we conversed.
The business rules have been consistent that it's fall and winter. That is what was done last year as well as this year. That would be a discussion that you would want to have because the impact's statewide. Mm-hmm. Most schools in the summer are doing remediation. So before we bring in summer school tests that haven't been in there previously, that would be something I'm sure that the Technical Advisory Committee and the State Board would want to weigh in. That is a previous carryover from the business rules that were in 17. They have not been brought in previously in any of the
so it's another business rule.
Correct.
I think our concern is that now that we know we really want to have our students college ready, and we have to have the opportunity to offer summer school math programs for accelerated students as well, and we'd like to have an opportunity to test the students and count them. And we're not on block schedule. Some districts are on block schedule. And we're not looking to go to block schedule. And block schedule would allow for that. But our schedule, we want to run an accelerated summer math opportunity at minimum, and we'd like the opportunity to capture the scores. Also, I question, if you're not going to capture the scores, you could use that very strategically for AZ Merit, and that's not who and what we are in Tolleson.
I could see that.
Nor what we want to become.
Right. And so then, as far as the business rules changing, we do realize, and it was noted in that meeting and many others, that we realize that the timeline on these, and we're working on a timeline as the board that will have any changes available before the beginning of the school year or in a timely fashion to the districts. We're under the gun also as the board, being directed by the legislators as to what our timeline should be. And I think I probably speak for all of us on the board, that it's not ideal for any of us. And we're all involved in education as well, and we're having to deal with the same things you're dealing with. I just wanted to let you know that we feel your pain on that one. And we will continue to try to improve on down the line regarding that. And when we're talking about the different business rules and the fact that they were changed at a late date, and you felt that you were unable to prepare or familiarize yourself with some of those, regardless of that, that's a business rule issue, and so outside the scope of this committee.
Respectfully, that's not my issue.
Yeah,
we had to action plan to it and submit it. We're a title district, so that's not respectfully. And I want to say this respectfully. That's not my issue. We have to do it.
I was just speaking to just those two, and I know that there were others. But I was reading your list of what you're requesting, and so I was just kind of factoring those 2 points in on that. And I do understand if you feel like you'd like to reiterate what your point, your issue. I feel like I've got it. I just wanted to. All right.
Yeah, I do understand. I have some concerns in terms of the percent tested and the way you were going about deciding who was testing and who was not testing. In prior years, I think back to Ames, all students were assessed. And of course, I think generally speaking, the field has the understanding that all students who are enrolled in the course are assessed. And so while I certainly am sympathetic to some of these issues, I think we definitely need to look at the summer school issue and obviously some of the other conversations we've been having around co-enrollment, 95% tested. To me, again, we're back to looking at concerns with the business rules, and so I'm not comfortable moving to approve a change in letter grade. So given that, I would move to dismiss.
Are you willing to accept the graduation rate students from Sierra Linda High School, the 4 students?
So can we address the others and then maybe Sierra Linda separately? Because okay. So for Copper Canyon, La Jolla, is it Tolleson and Westview? Would move to dismiss.
I'll second, but I do also want to go on record. I mean, the summer testing issue concerns me because I do know a lot of students that's, they're either taking it for accelerated or for remediation, but I think another opportunity, and I think it would also provide some accountability in the summer school, what you're doing in the summer school, and I think that's a underutilized opportunity statewide. They're just, summer school is sort of hit and miss across the state. So I'm going to second the motion, but I'd like to go on record having ATAC look at that. And it would be another change in the business rules, but we'd certainly let you know about it. But I think, this is an evolving process, and it's not evolving because we just want to change. It's because of input like this. So, I agree most of these are business rules related, but I would like going forward for us particularly to look at that summer component because I am familiar with some of what your district is doing, and it is important work that should receive some accountability in our system.
Thank you.
So, members, we have a motion and a second to dismiss, and let me make sure I get these right. Copper Canyon, La Jolla, Tolleson, and Westview. Is that correct? And then we're going to take Sierra Linda separately. Is that okay? Yeah. So all those in favor of dismissing those schools, say aye.
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 Okay, so the motion passes there. And I will also mention, so just so I'm keeping track, we're going to ask the Technical Advisory Committee to look at some of the summer school testing issues, the co-enrollment issues, which have come up a couple times, and also just as I think Castle Dome, there was something with the 5.8 and the acceleration readiness points that we'll have them look into too. And I want to make a point of clarification for something else that was previous with Vail, is that ADE is going to be working with Vail to ensure that calculation in terms of like the equation and the formula to get to those points was accurate.
Yep.
They will not be but they will not be looking at the co-enrollment issue as part of that. That's what ATAC is going to be taking care of.
Yeah, right.
I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so Sierra Linda now. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry I stepped out for a minute and I'm in the middle of it. Thank you.
All right, and you'd like to go back and discuss the graduation?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
What page did you find that? I'm looking for it right now.
We're just trying to find the details regarding the graduation in our packet. No.
Okay, I think this one's 12.
Members, I'm sorry. Did I? And I'm looking through our notes, and I don't see ADE giving an estimation if these students in the graduation rate would impact the letter grade or not. Is that? And I apologize again. For
And that's
missing
the
earlier
holdup.
discussion.
Is I feel like we're trying to figure that out.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Do folks at the ADE's accountability, and this one,
Was it page 12?
did you,
There's a memo in there. There's the 4 students. 3 of them are 2015. 1 of them's 2017. The 2015 are beyond 915s. With just the 1 change, it would not affect their grade. We did not go back and look at 4 because we considered that wouldn't be able to be changed.
Because it's 15.
It's 15. Did you find the memo? We can make a copy of what we have.
We found.
is it on the?
Yes, page 12. Yeah. Can only be open for previous 3 fiscal years. And so if you remove the 1, that was from
Get us there.
2000. Oh, there were 3 in 2015.
Yep.
I had it backwards.
I'm sorry, without the ability to go back and verify the data, I don't know what options we really have.
I thought we verified it together. So we communicated back and forth via the students between us and Shannon with Wendy and have opened the 915.
For the 1 student, but we've got the additional students, so the 1 student wouldn't get you there.
No,
correct?
We had my understanding was I was going back. My understanding was that all 4 had been verified.
For 2015?
Yes, yes. Is that
Okay.
your understanding as well? I had understood. I was.
Can I read the email? Just
Yeah.
and let me know if this is what you're referring to. So it says a Form 915 can only be open for the previous 3 fiscal years. This means that we cannot open a Form 915 data change request for the 3 students in the fiscal year 15. The accountability team at ADE conveyed that can include them in our graduation rate appeal process, and it is up to the state board to approve. Now I'm reading it, not listening to everybody talk. Approve their inclusion. I'm attaching the Form 915 for the student included in fiscal year 17 that I will be sending to superintendent. Okay, for approval before submitting the data change request to ADE. Catcher, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so members, I guess we have a 2-part question here for the committee. The first part is what to do with those other students that maybe a 5915 cannot be filled out for. So will the committee accept that those are changes regardless of the 15915 process and those students should be included? Then if yes, then frankly, I think the committee needs the department to determine if that would impact their letter grade or not, because that's how we've been doing it for all the other schools up to this point, and we don't have that determination right now because ADE didn't make that calculation because the 5915s wouldn't be possible for them. So I think that's kind of the 2-part question.
Exactly.
Okay, so, and I understand a little more fully now, and my concern with being able to submit and approve based on information that we're not getting a 915 for. How do we clarify and what's going to stop? Where's the line of information that we're not going to be accepting if we're accepting data without a 915?
So if I may, we do have other information. If you would just give us the opportunity to work, again, as you've opened the opportunity with our two other respective large comprehensive districts, we did share information back and forth with accountability on each one of these cases and their circumstances from 2015, and we could provide that as well for our students from 2015 without a 915, explaining the circumstances of their withdrawal. We'd be happy to provide that.
Do you have documentation that shows transcripts or otherwise from other schools or any information like that?
We do. That's why we're comfortable standing here today with 4 students.
I guess I just wonder why these weren't caught earlier.
Well, if I may, we have 600 students on open enrollment at Mindy School and 400 students on open enrollment at Sierra Linda. And we're a majority district. We have a lot of people coming and going. So I know I asked that question 100 times, and then I sit back and watch people withdraw and enter. I read our withdraw and entry reports, and they're significant. Although I have asked that question. Trust me, I'm standing in front of you.
Yeah.
But I want to say, when I go to the school and watch people withdrawing and entering and the magnitude of people that come, I'm like, I can understand it better. It gives me a different perspective.
I understand. It's just we have the 3 fiscal years to catch it.
I know.
All right.
Yeah. I think that's my concern. We're going back so many years. I agree. I mean, I understand the mobility issue and the ins and outs. I work with a lot of alternative schools and talk about ins and outs all throughout the year and verifying the data and the work involved in that. I guess I'm wondering, is there another process or a system where that could have been checked along the way?
Well, I will tell you that our lead registrar retired, who was our absolute person in 2015, and so we've been brought in another person and trained our whole district registrar system. So we have gotten significantly better, but we continue to improve. And Sierra Linda has had 2 registrars in that time as well. So yes, the answer is yes. And it would be wonderful if there was a statewide secondary registrar's manual that we could pull to. But of course, yes, the answer is we could always be better. But 4 is not perfect, but I mean, it gives you perspective. It's 4.
Does. You're right, and I see that. I just have a hard time making the exception when we hold everybody else to that standard. So,
well, we were encouraged to stand before you with this one at Guppy Mech. That's why I'm doing it.
Okay. Well, you can see how difficult it is. So,
and members, maybe also just to, I don't want to say further commiserate, but this is the first year that appeals based on incorrect data is possible at all. And so previously the board really hadn't had to encounter these kinds of questions before. And so, I think in many ways we're kind of trying to be as fair as possible, but, each of these decisions is kind of new in many ways.
It's not like we have anything to look off of history.
Right.
So and fundamentally, I want to give our districts every opportunity and advantage I can when it comes to this system. But I do not feel, like I said before, I don't feel comfortable making an exception when we're holding so many others to the same standard. And I understand it's a huge feat. It's 3 out of over 600 students that were incorrect, and only because of that, and I'm not saying there aren't things that need to be tweaked, but that just makes me, as a dismissal with the business rules, I would move towards that rather than a denial, because I do think that this might be something that needs to be addressed, because they can't be the only district in the state that has this same problem, but we have no direction on how to handle it. So then it leads it to be subjective. So that's my motion, but feel free, please.
So your motion is to dismiss based on business rules?
Yeah.
May I ask something?
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
I was just wondering, as you're calculating the 2 years for the 15-9-15 process, and I used to file those, when does that start counting from? From when you find the error, or is it in the fiscal year that it affects? Because if you start counting from last year,
3 years.
Yeah, go back 3 years from last year, you get 15-16. So it depends on where you start counting from. If you start counting from now, yes, you're right. You're outside the 3
The
years.
graduation would have been in 2015, right?
I think
So it would have been the 14-15 school year. I'm sorry, Catcher.
No, I was just going to say, remember, the board doesn't have any authority over the 15-9-15 process. So, I mean, honestly, we just kind of take at face value. If the department says that the 15-9-15 process is closed for that period, then that's kind of what we accept. Right. So right now we have a motion from Member Broussard to dismiss Sierra Linda High School's appeal based on it being an appeal of the business rules.
Although I am struggling with it, I second.
Okay. A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Thank you.
And again, these are
coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
members. Are we good for a break?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we go on maybe a 15-minute break, and we'll come back at 2:50. Is that 15 minutes? 2:50. Yeah. So we'll be back at 2:50 after a 15-minute break. Thank you. Okay, we got back a little bit later, but it is 2:51, so let's get back to it. We are on number 17, and then if you remember, number 16 was the school that we moved up, and we heard them earlier. So we're on number 17 with the Star Charter School. Is
Anybody here from Star?
Is anyone here from Star Charter School? Members, can you hold on 1 second for me and
Sure.
just.
We'll just double check.
Yeah. Well, why don't we just, I'm going to look into this a little bit, members, and try to reach out to the folks from STAR. But in the meantime, I think maybe we'll just keep moving along and then we can come back to them. So Salt River High School, you guys want to come up? And they do have a PDF presentation that should be uploaded already.
I thought you said Since we're on the clock, we'll go ahead and get started. Greeting Appeals Committee. I'm Dr. Louis Lafitte, Superintendent, Salt River Schools, located on the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. I'm joined by Mr. Robert Gray over here, Mr. Brian Mapp, Principal at Salt River High School, Ms. Melody Hearn, our Data Specialist, and Dr. Cynthia Clary, Assistant Superintendent at Salt River Schools. The purpose of today's appeal is to have ADE recalculate our 8th grade data, as 27 of our 8th grade test scores were invalidated and the 27 are still being used in the denominator. So with that request, what we would like is for Salt River's letter grade to be frozen at a D for the 2018 school year. Because ADE has to recalculate our scores during this presentation, we'll provide a snapshot of our strategic plan, curriculum and instruction, as well as Salt River High School's initiatives, focusing on the strategies we have put in place to improve student achievement. So in 2017, we engaged stakeholders in the development of a 5-year strategic plan in which the focus of our work really is on goal number 1 in the dark box there, improve student achievement to cultivate highly achieving schools. And with the knowledge of our achievement deficiencies, we took a systems approach to ensure continuity and alignment to our work. This includes addressing teacher improvement, instructional coaching, professional development, along with leadership development, ensuring the alignment of all areas of the system. By doing this, we can begin to impact the academic priorities of our strategic plan. And those 3 academic priorities written up here are reading, writing, and math. I'll go ahead and let Mr. Robert Gray go ahead and talk about the curriculum and instruction highlights.
Thank you, Dr. Lafitte. Good afternoon, Board. My name is Robert Gray. I'm in the 2nd year of being the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Salt River Schools, and I'd like to take a few moments to talk about how we are systematically improving instruction as well as curriculum so that we can increase student learning and achievement. So one of the fundamental principles of making any effective change in the system is having to look at your data and understand it and use it. So to better inform the choices that we're making at the district, site, and classroom levels, we decided to hire a district level data specialist, Melody Hearn, back in February of this school year. She's been instrumental in the collection and the use of data by meeting with site leaders and small groups of teachers to help them make meaning out of the various data points that we have, and then to use those data points to make the right decisions for our students. In terms of improving instruction, I'd like to talk about the 3 main avenues that we are pursuing. First is our instructional coach program. We started that just this summer, I'm bringing on board 6 practitioners who have been assigned to each of the 4 campuses to work on improving the instructional methods of our teachers. So while they're housed within my department, they work closely with the principals in order to make sure that their work is most strategic. Secondly, we have a tutoring program that's been around for a number of years, but what's different is that we have developed some professional development specifically for the tutors to increase their skills as well as involve them in the PD that is provided to our teachers. Next is our division PD, and this is perhaps the thing I'm most proud of in how we have structured district-led professional development for all of our sites. So in order to break the cycle of drive-by professional development, we have focused on Charlotte Downson's framework for teaching for the last 18 months. Every PD that we lead is tied to the framework. And we've also used observation data to drive the specific topics for each of those sessions. And so by this, we have avoided the being a mile wide and an inch deep. And so by focusing on the framework for the past 2 years, our teachers are beginning to deeply embed the structures within the framework, within their own instructional practices. So now I'd like to move on to how we are systematically trying to improve our curriculum. So our data showed that we really needed to work on ELA, and last year we adopted Pearson's My Perspectives for the high school and ReadyGen for the elementary school. And that program is bringing needed rigor and cohesion to our English language instruction. Our data also showed that we needed to work on math, but we spaced that out because we didn't want to overwhelm the system or our teachers by adopting both English language arts and mathematics at the same time. So we're going right now through the math adoption process, and we'll have a new math program to implement in the next school year. So it has been my pleasure to talk about how we are systematically trying to improve instruction and curriculum at Salt River Schools. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our principal, Mr. Mabb.
Skukta Shani Anapchuga, Brian Mabb. My name is Brian Mabb. Good afternoon. We are a school that integrates culture and language to try to help our students understand their heritage and who they are. I've been at this school as principal for the last 2 years. In the last year and a half, we've embraced our division systems approach and our strategic plan to try to improve our students' academics. We are focused on both maintaining our community's culture, language, as well as improving our academics. We have reviewed our data and are cognizant of the improvements that we need to make to close our achievement gaps, and we are working hard to do so. Our journey of improvement, we understand, has just begun, and we ask for the time to let it continue and to see the improvements. To empower our staff to address our areas of improvements, we have increased structured time for teacher collaboration in a number of ways. Classroom instruction has been supported through a more structured evaluation process that is aligned to the Danielson framework that curriculum instruction Mr. Gray had just spoken to, and staff receives multiple points of feedback through a variety of different administrators from across sites. To further empower our staff, we've incorporated a variety of formats for professional development that has used data to drive our professional development. Furthermore, we have created a shared leadership structure to review our data and to take specific action. Our PLCs are a strong evidence of that as our primary area of growth that targets our student achievement. To address all areas, we have also augmented multiple indicators for college and career readiness standards with partnerships with both EVIT as well as Scottsdale Community College, allowing our students greater access to different curriculum. We are addressing our needs in our targeted subpopulations, recognizing that we have our ESS students that have scored differently than our other populations, and providing professional development for our staff, as well as parapros that work specifically with those students. Recognizing that our students are often impacted by trauma in our community, we are working to be more trauma-informed and to find more initiatives that support our students as they go through those challenges. We have augmented our student support, specifically embedding supports during the school day with targeted tutoring during not only after school, but during class time, where they get to work in one-on-one and small group settings with our students needing help. We are also working to personalize our goal setting and mentoring. We couple that with small class sizes and a continued focus on culture and language. as specified before, all of this is to ensure that we are academically sound in reading, writing, and math. We believe that those systems that we put in place will start to see significant growth in each of those areas. Thank you. I'd like to turn the rest of the time over to Dr. Lafitte.
So, research tells us it takes a minimum of 3 to 5 years for change to take place. And by freezing Salt River High School at a D, it allows us to put our systems in place while improving the trajectory of student outcomes for youth of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. Again, we thank you for your time and are available to answer any questions that you may have.
It looks like you're doing a lot of wonderful things, and obviously you're serving a community that certainly needs you, and I'm really encouraged to hear what you're doing. In regards to your appeal, unfortunately, this has to do with test administration primarily, and so to me, this is outside of the scope of the appeals process. And so I feel like, again, this is more of a business rule issue because it's an improper test administration. So I would move to dismiss. However, somebody else on the committee may disagree.
Board members. Hi, Skritosh. I'm Melody Hearn, the data specialist within our division, but formerly ADE Accountability, so I truly understand this process, and I'm grateful to you for listening to us today and grateful to the accountability team because I know the hard work that goes into this. So our appeal is actually twofold. We did put a piece of data in there as we would like that looked at. We're such a tiny school that those 27 students make such a huge difference for us. But what we're more concerned about, though, is as you looked at our strategies, division-wide, site-wide, we are really concerned about just letting these initiatives really do the work that they need to do in this process to improve. And so being frozen at a D so as to allow us another year of implementation to truly enhance our student achievement.
So you're not asking for a letter grade change?
We technically are asking for a letter grade change. In 2017, we were a D school. We would like to be frozen at the 2017 D.
Can you just explain again the graph paper issue in the test administration?
Sure. So during the testing window, it came to my attention that we had some of our junior high students who had access to graph paper that had the X and Y axis labeled X and Y and numbered. And as soon as we recognized that they had access to that, we pulled that the papers from them and then reported. We called Mary Pat and asked, okay, what do we do? I just discovered that this was being given to our students. And so we were instructed to report the irregularity, and that resulted in all of those students who had access, which wasn't all of our students. We had some students that weren't present that day. They tested later, but it was the majority of the students in that grade level. So all of those students' math tests were invalidated. They weren't scored at all, and they're being counted against us in our percent tested is what the issue is. We're asking on that part of our appeal if you would recalculate by taking out those 27 students in the percent tested calculation.
Okay. So it's not necessarily the incorrect data, it's just...
No.
Okay.
The computer going down. Or
And so,
iPad.
right, so last year you got a D, this year it was an F.
Correct.
And so I kind of feel like I would not support the change of the grade to a D and the freezing of it this year. I would have, it would have, I almost feel like you should have asked for it last year. Because this year, you're at an F. So, and I know it looks like you are doing really great things. I mean, I can tell you have support for your employees and your staff and your stakeholders, and that's going to go a long way. And I think that you mentioned 3 years to implement change or to see results from change, and I don't think you're going to have to wait that long with this kind of work and plan that you're doing. So for myself, I don't know if we're ready to make a motion yet, so I'll let
Can I just clarify
Sure.
one? Because
Yeah.
you mentioned that it would be something that we should have done last year, and we really didn't have that opportunity last year to address that because that invalidation didn't happen to impact us until this year.
That's more of a candid comment. I understand, though. Thank you.
And members, we do already have a motion on the floor from Member Kay, a motion to dismiss because it's more of a business rule issue.
Well, I can second that as well.
Okay. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Thank you for coming out today.
Thank you.
Good luck.
And the motion passes.
I think I forgot. Sorry.
Folks from Star School here? So members will jump back to number 17, which is Star School, and I will, full disclosure, they did inform me that they would be here around 3 o'clock today ahead of time. They told me they would be here at 3, and that was at like 2:45. So I guess I'm saying don't hold it against them that they should have when they said they would. So.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Ike Ozis. I'm the principal of the Star School. This is my fourth year at the Star School. So we're coming from Flagstaff. So we're located about 23 miles northeast of Flagstaff, serving mainly Navajo students. And we're an off-the-grid school, 100% off-the-grid, generating our own power from electricity and wind. And so the school has been there for about 18 years. And again, this is my fourth year. So when I first came in, the school had a performance management plan. So we had the PMP mandate. So we got out of that, and then we were a C school. And our letter grade dropped to F, which was really unexpected. So our request is to go to a D from an F for a few reasons. One, mainly because of incorrect data. I don't know if you have a copy of our appeal. So the special education subgroup improvement for ELA and math, if you look at page 4, that's the 2017 subgroup improvement section. And for SPED, it shows 0% and 0%. For the 2018, it shows for the current year percentage, it's 6.67, and the prior year percentage, it shows 25%. So, but the previous year, it showed 0%. So, so if it was 0%, then it shows an improvement to 6.67, and we did not get any points earned from this section. So we realized then data error in this section. And for the economically disadvantaged subgroup improvement, when we looked at our static file, we showed most of our students showed as 0. Which is not true. We have about 80% of our students free and reduced lunch. So that, there was a data error in there. And in the 3-year full academic year stability proficiency, we don't see any weight for the 3-year full academic year, even though we had about 60 students when we looked at there are 3 full academic year. So those are the data errors that we noticed. And we also, if you look at the previous years, we've been showing a steady increase. So we've been improving till last year. There were a few things happen which we did not put in our appeal application, but one of our teachers had a cancer and could not come to school for 3 months continuously. And that included the AZ merit testing, so another teacher had to do proctor the test for her, and we show a 0% proficiency in her own homeroom. But we didn't want to include it in our appeal, which is questionable. But that happened, and our internal data also showed improvement. So for the first time in school's history, we hired 2.5 full-time professionals for the school-wide enrichment program. So we have 2 full-time professionals and then a half-time who helps special ed and enrichment program. So they pull out students in small groups and provide instruction. And that is going really, really well. We see a lot of improvement in our internal data. And the AZ merit results did not really align with our internal data. So it could be partially because of iReady, which is the program that we use. So we switched to Galileo this year, which we were hoping to see more aligned results with our internal testing. But that's something that we've started. And this is a school-wide enrichment process. So I had a small group in middle school math, and then our secretary had a small group. So when it's from 8 a.m. until about 9:30, the whole school does school-wide enrichment with small groups teaching ELA and math. So it's been in second year, and we are expecting to see positive results in that as well. So when we were a C school, before we even knew that we were going to get an F, we contracted with the Quality Schools program under Center for Student Achievement with the goal of going to a B school. And when we got the initial results, I was concerned that we may go back to D. I was not expecting an F, and we only missed it by less than a point, so 0.994. And this is a 3-year program that we've committed with our own resources. So we pay a lot of money for this program, but we're happy to do that. And we are in the first year of this program. We worked with a trainer last year, and we were really happy. So we are committed to continuing with the Quality Schools program. Already mentioned about school-wide intervention and enrichment. And you kind of can see the schedule, the school-wide enrichment intervention schedule. We also have an instructional support specialist who is on campus and helps provides meaningful feedback to teachers, go over lesson plans. We are a school who care about our kids. We're not a school who's been there getting F for many, many years and who doesn't care. So we are really concerned, and we expect our school-wide efforts to show its results in the coming years. And it was really a demoralizing, like a wake-up call for our school. Getting an F, and we would like to continue our efforts. So we are requesting our letter grade from F, change from F to a D, and we already, registered for the school improvement plan presentation on the 29th. So we really take it seriously. We would like to continue our efforts, but the psychological impact of this on our community and our parents, especially now everybody is a small community. We're in a rural area. We're not an urban school, so everybody feels like a family. So so hopefully, if you're granted, we now that we don't have the psychological impact of being an F school, we're hopeful to to continue our efforts and then go back to being a C school and then hopefully B school, and then putting these systems in place to stay there academically. So. So if you have any questions or any...
I do have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for making the trip today. And also, it sounds like you're doing a lot of really great things for your community. I am wondering, because this is based on data and based on the evidence that you provided, it seems like you certainly have a case. Are you going to open the 915 to correct some of the data? Is that part of your intention? So on the free and reduced lunch status and some of those, it seems that you have the opportunity to open a 915 with school finance to get that data corrected. Is that your intention?
Yes, so that is our intention, and part of the data error could be on us because we are using Synergy as and the state used to own it, now EduPoint owns it. So things changed in terms of reporting. So we took serious measures to make sure that what we do is proper. So we report data properly, and so we will definitely correct, because there are other implications as well for other programs. So we definitely would like to do that.
Yes.
And members, just for the record, it has been indicated that their letter grade would improve if those students in the free and reduced lunch subgroup improvement were included.
So in my notes, and I think the other ladies as well, it just kind of said that we were waiting for those 915 to correct the data for recalculation. It's at 15,915.
But it looks like if they did, because in a couple, the 3-year FAE is 0 right now. there's clearly some elements that seem to be left off. So based on that, I would move to approve your appeal from an F to a D.
Second.
As long as the data supports it.
Member Broussard, I think maybe this is something that we came up with before, or maybe not directly, in that some of these will require a 15,915 for the data to stick for future years. However, as part of this appeals committee process, there's, I want to say, like a lower bar in terms of verifying that information. So the appeals committee can, with some documentation, make a determination that, those students should be included. We know that the 15,915 process isn't completed yet, but, we feel pretty confident that they should be. And so because of that, we're going to bump up the letter grade. But I will say, and I think this is something that we'll have to circle up with schools with after, is that just because the appeals committee may recommend approval and just because the board may change letter grades based on that incorrect data, that does not mean that the data has actually changed. That just means that we recognize that maybe there was something off and that the letter grade should change. And that's something we're going to communicate with schools.
And so the schools will need to go in and do that so that is the correct data for future. Yeah,
absolutely.
So then you seconded, didn't you? I think we can vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The motion passes for an approval.
Thank you.
Ketcher, if possible, also, in terms of the implications of some of these changes, I would like to know, and maybe it's something we could follow up later, like the 3-year FAE. If these changes aren't made, whether it's through the school or I'm not sure how the department would handle some of the changes, but they would have future impacts potentially on a school's letter grade. So maybe we could learn a little bit more about that in the future.
Member Kate, yes, absolutely. And I think, again, with this being the first year that they could appeal based on incorrect data, it's kind of the first time we're running into it. But yes, I think that's a worthwhile conversation. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And then so last up we have Moon Valley High School, number 19, who has so bravely stuck around.
Presentation.
Good afternoon, members of the Appeal Committee. Thank you for allowing us an opportunity today regarding the appeal that we have submitted for Moon Valley High School, one of 9 Title I high schools in the Glendale Union High School District. With me today presenting is our Associate Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Mr. Craig Musey, our Chief Technology and Research Officer, Mr. Josh Dean, in the end, our Principal at Moon Valley High School, Ms. Anat Salyer, and our Assistant Principal, Mr. Jonathan Parker. Today you will hear about the Glendale Union High School District and Moon Valley High School, a school that has earned the highest rating possible in terms of letter grades, either an A or excelling since 2006. The longstanding pattern of excellent ratings did change for the 2017-18 school year from an A to a B, due to the ELL N count being changed from 20 to 10 during the state board meeting in May at the end of the school year. We recognize that complexities of statewide accountability systems periodically lead to unintended consequences and outliers, thus necessitating the need for this appeal process. The appeal on the slide shown is asking the Appeals Committee to recommend to the State Board that Moon Valley High School be awarded a letter grade of A for the 2017 school year after considering the following special circumstances you see in the 4 bulleted points. In considering these circumstances, we are requesting that Moon Valley be scored on a 90-point scale, just as most schools in the state of Arizona without an ELL program are scored. And at this time, you will hear from our Associate Superintendent, Mr. Craig Musey, followed by Anat Salyer, Principal of Moon Valley High School.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board. The Glendale Union High School District has a long and rich history of utilizing a continuous improvement process. We welcome and appreciate accountability and have used a similar method of measurement for decades, which parallels the state letter grade accountability system. We appreciate this type of accountability. As you have read our appeal, we have identified the specific areas of the appeal as outlined in the rubric. You're hearing information today pertaining to incorrect data, environmental issues, and adverse testing conditions. Glendale Union has core values centered around making data-driven decisions. On page 4, you will see some of that outlined for you. Each year, we engage in a cycle of continuous improvement to ensure all students are successful. The cycle starts well before the school year begins, identifying needs, creating action steps, using a wide range of data in the process in order to write aligned SMART goals. These goals are in place at the start of the school year, which measurement criteria in order to determine success. This will drive the decision-making moving forward each school year. All right, back that up. That's okay.
Bottom left.
Thank you. Glendale Union has, if you look at this particular slide, specifically looking at ELL, Glendale Union has a tremendous success with our ELL population. The state has used our district as a model, requesting our presence on each committee, asking us to present at various trainings, and using us to present on various committees, also as a model by the state. We ensure alignment to our model of success to help other districts. We ensure alignment also with all policies, including ARS 15753, which provides direction on parental choice in opting out of ELL services and the number of LKIT students required in creating an ELL program, which is 20. The few ELL students requesting services were moved to a sister campus with an ELL program, which is designed to prepare students for the EXAL exam. There were 14 parent withdrawal students that refused services wishing to remain at Moon Valley and not to be placed in an ELL program. Under ARS 15753, individual schools in which 20 students or more shall be offered an ELL class. In other cases, students must be permitted to transfer to a public school in which such a class is offered, which we did. The formula change after the school year completed caused an adverse effect with a change of the end count from 20 to 10. The original formula that was in place to begin the school year aligned to state law. The formula change on May 21st specifically for schools such as, affected schools specifically such as Moon Valley, with only a population that was left there of parent withdrawal students. We are concerned about the incorrect use of data due to the change in the end count. As I direct your attention to slide 6, Glendale Union has a tremendous success with our ELL program. Of course, those schools in our district with those programs, you can see tremendous success and all receiving 10 points under the formula. In addition, you can see the anomaly for those that do not have an ELL program, specifically Moon Valley High School and one of our other schools, Moon Valley scoring 6 out of 10. The two schools in our district with ELL, the two school districts without ELL programs in our district, one below the 10 threshold and one above the 10 threshold, that being Moon Valley, are outliers in the original formula measurement. When Glendale Union has an ELL program, we ensure the success of those students. With no ELL program at Moon Valley, this creates an adverse testing condition for those 14 parental withdrawal students. Finally, I would like to share with you the study that was from an outside group, Arizona State University, referenced on page 7. Dr. O'Reilly, professor and researcher at ASU, recently conducted a study on the state letter grade formula. Adopted in late May of this year, found significant negative impacts with the change of the end count number from 20 to 10. He started by showing the K8 on page 8, and as you can see on the left-hand chart, a significant change and lower score on ELL. You look at ELL for high school on page 9, and you're going to see the same impact, going from 8.2 to 7.5. ELL scores declining significantly with this change, an unintended consequence that did impact most schools in a negative way. On page 10, you will see that 2 schools sit as an anomaly and are outliers. Moon Valley is one of those 2 schools. Both very high A schools during the 2016-17 school year and would be A schools for 2017-18, but a change to the end count from 20 to 10 with those students being parent withdrawals now impacting an entire school at a grade. These are outlier schools, an unintended consequence, and they become B schools with this change. These outlier schools saw more negative impacts than positive ones, specifically in the higher achieving schools. Dr. O'Reilly concluded on page 11, under bullet 3, that the change of the end count from 20 to 10 to allow small schools to receive a letter grade resulted in low ELL points. This was an unintended consequence. Moon Valley honored parent wishes instead of creating an environment that goes against parental wishes and violates state statute. With no ELL program at Moon Valley High School, this creates an adverse testing condition. We recognize that this unintended consequence caused a great school to become an outlier and receive a misrepresented grade. Now at this time, I'm going to allow Ms. Anat Sawyer from Moon Valley High School to address you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. If you could please look at page 12. Moon Valley is a campus that has a lot of pride in their academic achievement. Our teachers and staff work hard each day to ensure that all our students are successful. As a result, Moon Valley has earned the highest performance criteria since 2006. This is an achievement that all stakeholders value greatly, and we display our A proudly on the front of the school. Our students have been able to earn an A because they consistently showed proficiency and growth on state assessments over the past 12 years, including last school year, And recently, with the new formula, Moon Valley has also been able to show great strength in each additional area monitored. This pattern of success has not wavered. As you can see on page 13 of your packet, Moon Valley compares favorably to other A schools in the state. Moon Valley earned an A in the area of proficiency. Moon Valley earned an A in the area of growth. Moon Valley earned an A in graduation rate. Moon Valley earned an A in college and career readiness index. Moon Valley earned an A with our students in special populations as well as Ames Science. Moon Valley even scored above the average of other A schools in 3 of the indicators. Moon Valley students excelled in 5 out of the 6 letter grade indicators. However, due to the ELL end count change from 20 to 10, thus resulting in Moon Valley being placed on a 100-point scale, Moon Valley received a B. As this chart shows, if we remained on the 90-point scale, we would have continued to be a strong A, as we have been for the past 12 years. We are less than 1 point away from an A grade. Our students, staff, parents, and community members have been greatly affected by this drop in our letter grade. As you know, a letter grade is a representation of the collective performance of all of our students. When you look at page 14, you'll see the impact of each student for each of the components. You will also see what a disproportionate value our ELL students weighed towards the overall letter grade for the school. These students, who were successful on all other indicators, however, as a result of parental choice, did not have an ELL program to prepare them for the unique assessment of the AZELA. As a result, our entire ELL score, which consists of 14 parent refusal students, which is 1% of our student population, represents 10% of our entire letter grade. This means that each student has a 0.71 value towards the letter grade. This is almost an entire point value for each of the 14 students on a 100-point scale. Given our school's history and achievement, the fact that we have continued that achievement, and the disproportionate weight of 1% of our population, Moon Valley's students, staff, parents, and community members believe a letter grade of B is an inaccurate representation of the academic performance of our students during the 17-18 school year. Thank you. We'll hear again from our superintendent, Mr. Capistran.
This slide does show a summary of the special circumstances that have been discussed in this presentation. We appreciate the fact that the Appeals Committee and the State Board have a history of considering special circumstances and making accommodations to the accountability process when warranted. And we do believe that Moon Valley High School's special circumstances warrant such an accommodation. We are requesting, as you see on the final slide, to summarize that considering these circumstances, we are requesting that Moon Valley High School be scored on a 90-point scale, thus awarding Moon Valley students in the community a letter grade of A. If the formula had not been changed, Moon Valley would have earned an A. If the formula had been changed in time for us to enact our continuous improvement process, Moon Valley would have earned an A. As you heard, Moon Valley earned an A in proficiency, in growth, in graduation rate, in college and career readiness, and in bonus points. In conclusion, Moon Valley earned an A, but received a B. We are asking that Moon Valley be treated the same as the other schools in the state that don't have an ELL program and are scored on a 90-point scale. And we are asking that the Appeals Committee vote to recommend to the board that Moon Valley be awarded an A. At this time, we'll stand for any questions the Appeals Committee might have.
I have a question. Are all 14 of your ELL students opt-out? Parent opt-outs, all 14?
Yes, that is accurate.
Were they assessed at any point, or were they opted out before any kind of assessment? So I'm wondering, what is their, what level did they come in at?
All 14 were at the intermediate level.
Okay.
The ones, yes, so the 14, because
Okay.
the ones that were highly encouraged to attend a program at a sister school.
Okay. And what are you doing currently, given that the formula did change? So what are you doing this school year?
We have offered to those 14 students a class period during the school day where they are receiving specific Azella assessment skills, learning what the test looks like and preparing that for them, and it's during their school day.
But they remain opt-out students?
They are all opt-out students, yeah.
And obviously honoring those wishes of those parents, but one of the things that we had to consider as a district with this formula change, unless it changes again in January, is that we would offer an ELL program on the campus for however small it is. Whoever comes, so if it's only 2 or 3 kids, but that's not what obviously we made sure that those kids that wanted services went to a school that had a program.
Mm-hmm. So right now you are offering like a study session to prep for the Azella for those 14 students?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess I was just confused because you said graded on a scale of 90 as any school without an ELL program, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't have an ELL program.
Yeah, I believe I said other schools without an ELL program. That would be most.
Yeah.
It would be definitely a special circumstance in which we're just above that threshold. There would be other
it's more
schools.
than...
That is correct. So there are other schools without an ELL program that are under the 10.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So even though the parents have opted out, they still go into the calculation?
Yes.
Correct.
That is accurate.
Mm-hmm. Do the parents have a right to opt out?
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate the fact that you mentioned the change in the N count or the N number, because obviously it has a positive impact on some and a negative impact on others, and those were things that I think that we really struggled with making a decision on here as the state board.
Go ahead.
Yes, can I make one comment to that, please?
Yeah.
Okay, that was part of the study that Dr. O'Reilly had presented to us, and more of your high-performing schools, you saw more of a negative impact towards those schools when we did our study, and Dr. Dean had done a pretty extensive study on that. Mm-hmm. It had more negative effects towards your higher-performing schools, and it had less of a positive impact on the flip end. More schools were impacted in a negative way in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Including many of the schools that advocated for that change at the May meeting.
Members, Dr. O'Reilly has not presented the board with that information. I would be very interested to see it, certainly, and quite honestly, it was the first time I had seen it. My understanding is he presented it at an ASA conference a little while on the 5th, I think. We haven't seen it, I can't really comment one way or the other, but I also think fundamentally that's something for the board to consider as a much broader and certainly important policy discussion. We had a lot of discussions about the N count, and we recognized that was an important discussion. So definitely cherish and I think important whatever work Dr. O'Reilly did. Definitely want to see it. I just don't know if that work is something that should guide this committee's decision in terms of, because that's a policy decision.
Yes,
so I just want to.
And I was just making a comment because it was interesting. I have a school in my district that was positively affected, and they're top performing in the county, and so to hear the other side of that is valuable.
Ketcher, I don't know if this is probably an unfair question of me. Is there any sort of precedent for granting the type of appeal that they're asking for, where we are reducing effectively the total points possible that they're being graded out of?
Member K, and again, really my knowledge on the institutional history here really just goes back to what we did last year and the little that I understand from the previous iteration. So with that limited scope, not to my knowledge. But again, that's 1 year back, and then the appeals process is based off of how the appeals were reviewed and recommended under the old iteration, but not to my knowledge.
May I comment quickly on that question? I think every precedent that we have was not a precedent before it was set. So I think today would be a wonderful day to begin that precedent.
Well, I do see your point as far as being, and it doesn't even coincide with my notes. I feel like I'm going on uncharted territory here. So grading you on a 90-point scale makes sense to me because you did not have an ELL program because all of those students had opted out. And so I think if that waiver were recognized by the state or by ADE, then, which it should be because it's a opt-out from the parents. Not that I can make that decision. I see a look from Catcher on my own. But I would think that that would, it shows documentation.
Member Broussard, I guess the English language learner indicator is not dependent on necessarily the program that's being offered to the students, and that they are English language learners.
Regardless of whether or not they've opted out of a program or not.
Because that's how they were tested.
Because they were tested as a Zella.
And certainly, something that with the 20 students in statute, where there's sort of that threshold for when schools are required to offer that class, is something maybe the board wants to take into consideration. I think there will still be challenges, though, as we think about the accountability system, which uses FAE, and I don't know how those 20 student determinations are made, and maybe even, I don't know if there's a threshold for how those, or when those 20 students are counted. I mean, I honestly don't know. But that will always be something that, if it is different, might always be inconsistent.
Yeah.
So there are enough inconsistencies in this one for me. All of the signs and all of the data that you provided certainly suggests that you are performing at the level that this board wants to see schools performing at. We did make a change late in the year. And there have been, there's the 20 student count for the program. We had historically a 20 end count. We made that change, intending it to have positive consequences. Certainly this is an unintended consequence. And based on your history, and although I have incredible reluctance to go outside of the scope and set this kind of a precedent, I would be in favor of recommending approval of their appeal. I don't know if anyone is with me.
So if we go forward with Member K's recommendation, would you continue to have the call it study session for the Azella for those students?
Yes. Yes. One of the things that we've done is we already moved on that. It was taken into consideration as soon as we saw the that change, and so not only was it enacted for Moon Valley, it was also enacted for the other school in case they hit by accident 10 of parent withdrawals. It also raises consideration for what we would provide for any opt-out student in the district. Mm-hmm. And so we worked very hard to make sure that all of those students then would receive some additional then. But it was more specifically a school that doesn't have an ELL program. There has to be something that we would then put in place to account for that. And it also means that we had to look at staffing issues as well. So because you don't have an ELL teacher on the campus. So, and you have to make that consideration.
So I would be in favor of Member K's motion if that remained, because one of the reasons the end count was lowered is we don't want that particular group not addressed, not served, and yeah, there are some high-performing, especially high-performing larger schools that weren't very happy with that, but there were a lot of constituencies that wanted that and asked for that. So I would second that if you can, continue that, and I think we'll know if you don't. So, thank you.
If I could, we actually made that change before we received our letter grade, knowing we had to address that that issue with those students and preparing them for the assessment once we knew that the end count had changed. So, regardless of the appeal, that's something that we would continue to do.
Thanks. Okay. So I second that motion.
I'm sorry, Member Kay, was that a motion earlier?
It was a motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to grant the appeal and issue an A.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, and the motion passes.
Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this appeal.
Thank you.
So, members, where we're at now is that concludes the non-expedited appeals. I don't need to stand up here, but I am. So this is sort of the inflection point of the meeting where if you feel good, we can start looking at the other appeals, those expedited appeals, which are 61 appeals, roughly. Or we do have that time blocked off tomorrow beginning at 2:30, and we can just come back with a fresh head if that's what you're feeling. So it's really at the pleasure of the committee. Staff is willing to be flexible either way.
Tomorrow.
This whole process takes a lot out of us, and it's been an incredibly stressful and taxing day. We would, I think, like to continue tomorrow.
Members, that sounds good. So unless there's anything else that we want to talk about or any cleanup housekeeping items, I think we will adjourn and reconvene tomorrow at 2:30 to hear those remaining appeals. So,
okay. We'll be ready. Thanks.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Okay, so my concern was, did we just shoot us?